What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Squeeze the Juice. It's been a minute since we've seen you guys. You know, we took a little rest.
Sabbatical.
Sabbatical. That's a good one. But we are back. We had some business we had to take care of, a few meetings, in the
some administrative matters.
Yeah, exactly. An off season, which we have now declared the off season because we are going to go solely football from now on.
Yeah,
that was just a decision we made. It's easier. We enjoy it the most.
What's this doing here then?
Jeremy and Jalen are moral support.
Moral support, yes.
Moral support.
We're going to go solely football. It is finally draft time. You know, we did it last year. We're going to do it again. We do have our returning guest from the mock last year. It is FueledByMotown, a.k.a. Tyler. Welcome back. Welcome back to the show. We had quite a good mock draft last year. Lots of good views. Even though
a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was also good views for the time, like the time length, right? It was a little over like 2 hours. And this one's probably going to be similar to that. But people love we're 2 weeks out from the draft pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, or we're less than 2 weeks out, right? Next Thursday.
This is about the time where I start geeking out crazy about the draft. Any draft content I can find, I'll eat it up. So.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, right now, 2 weeks out, roughly, a little under 2 weeks out now, but this is the time where things start getting serious. Yeah. So definitely the perfect time to
draft downtown.
Draft in the hometown.
Yeah, it is.
I'll be there.
Right down 94.
Evan will be there.
I'll be there.
Yeah, they'll be there.
Say hello.
Yeah.
He'll be wearing his merch.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Technically, you do have a form of merch.
We'll see what team I'm rocking on draft night. We'll see what team I'm rocking.
He'll have the Patriots hoodie on, and then he'll wrap it around his waist and have the Lions jersey.
No, I'll be going to Tin Roof as soon as the Patriots make their pick because I know I'm going to be disappointed.
It's going to be traded for like so much of 6-round picks, and then
I'm going to be I'm out of here. See you later.
That Joe Alt pick's going to hit different.
That wouldn't shock me at all, though.
It's not.
Yeah.
I can't get that jersey, man.
Let's not imagine that right now, please.
I'll come and I'll have a custom Joe Alt's jersey.
Yeah.
Come on, Joe.
You should come.
It's so hard to get that day off.
Thursday, I get that.
Yeah.
Just because, I don't know, we're short-staffed too in a lot of areas.
We're going to go down Friday too, so we're going to try coming down Friday. It'll probably be less busy that day too, I would say.
I'm off Saturday when no one cares.
I won't be there then. Cause
I know,
I'll
you'll be on a flight.
Yeah.
I might be going to the Tigers game. I'll slide through.
Wow.
On Saturday?
They have a Tigers game that day at home. That's bad planning.
Not great. Honestly, not great.
Yeah.
But it is like a 1:00 game.
Yeah.
I'll think about it. Keep me in the wraps because I'm off that day. So
for sure.
Full day downtown. Just vibing. All right. We have reset our breakdown for the mock. So last year we had it where I had pick 1. Did you have pick 2? And you had pick 3? Yeah. And then this year, Tyler will have the first pick. I'll have second pick, and Evan will have third pick. So luckily, it fits properly that Evan will have the third pick with the Patriots.
I didn't do that intentionally or anything.
And and then I guess I have Detroit this year.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun to get their reactions on what I choose.
And then pick 31, 32 we'll all do together.
Yeah, so it makes it even out.
Yeah.
That was the debate. We were either going to do consensus for the last 2 like we did last year or go 1 extra into the third or the second round. So it's back and forth.
Which we still could because it is Carolina.
It's true.
What are they going to choke on? No, they're going to trade out. We don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, they'll probably do something dumb.
Yeah.
Their owner needs to be fixed first, and then just, the GM's okay. There's potential in that coach, Canales.
Yeah, we'll see.
But just the ownership is just it's not just something like inside people know. There's video evidence of people realizing how it's bad.
I feel bad for Bryce, honestly. He doesn't deserve that.
That's true.
He didn't ask for it, right? I mean, he's the one that got drafted there.
It's true.
And he has to deal with it all.
So, going forward, shall we just kick it off? Should we just get into it?
Let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's do it.
We know what's going down.
Chicago is on the clock.
Chicago is on the clock. We know the deal. All rumors swirling around this for probably at least a year or more now.
Yeah, this has been
since the games went final in week 18 of the NFL, we all knew who this pick was and where he was going. I'll start off by saying, me personally, okay, so we'll just make the pick. So it's gonna be Caleb Williams, of course, as everybody knows it's going to be.
It's a no-brainer.
And Chicago's had an interesting offseason. They've added quite a bit of talent. They added Keenan Allen. They added DeAndre Swift, who last time I was on, which was the draft recap episode, DeAndre Swift just was traded to Philly, so now he'll be in Chicago. But yeah, so it's going to be Caleb Williams, and I personally do not like Caleb Williams. I think he's going to be a bust. I don't think, I think with the Lions, it's like with the Detroit Lions, they very much helped me realize the importance of the players' football character, and and I think Caleb Williams has a really poor football character. I think he's all about himself, and he's all about and all that.
Ego.
Yeah, I just think that's how it's going to be. I think that the locker room really was behind Justin Fields, and that's going to be tough for Caleb Williams to overcome. Is he's going to come into a locker room where a lot of guys are not really behind him. They're actually probably going to be a little upset that he's even there because they liked Justin. But we'll see how we'll see what happens. He has a ton of talent. I mean, I will say they do say his style of quarterbacking, which I agree is in college was like Patrick Mahomes. He does play that way. He does freelance a lot and makes a lot of big plays. So we'll see. It might work out. A ton of people think it will. I know Evan's a big fan of him, but so that's gonna be the pick.
I do like the prospect in Caleb. The fit in Chicago, you couldn't ask for a better situation if you're a rookie quarterback, because you're going into a team that is full of veterans, full of talent, full of draft capital too. So you're going to be adding even younger talent around you. So it really is the perfect spot if you are a quarterback coming out of college. You're not going to be forced in a situation that a number one pick typically would find themselves in, right? Think Trevor Lawrence, think Matthew Stafford. They literally came into situations where the team that they took over was at the bottom of the chili pot, essentially. They were the crust, and it was just a gross situation. I don't disagree with the sentiment Tyler is saying. I think there is a bit of an ego with Caleb. I think that can get very, very dicey in a city like Chicago. You carry that ego around, and if it doesn't work, they're going to be coming at you big time, because this is a city, whether you disagree or agree, they were in love with Justin Fields. They loved him. They want him to be the quarterback, and I think most of them now are okay with the fact that he's gone, and they're excited about Caleb. But if he doesn't pan out, the first thing they're going to say is we should have kept Justin Fields.
Yep.
And that's kind of an issue, I think, from a fan perspective. Do I think the locker room will be able to move off of Justin? Yes, because there's a lot of vets. I think they kind of understand a business is a business. DJ Moore, the Bears wide receiver 1, he's had a different quarterback every year in his career. So I don't think that's something that he's not accustomed to. I just think when it comes down to it, Caleb has the talent, but will he have everything else that comes with being a quarterback? That's really that's really the only question mark that remains, because I think he has the talent, but it's just everything else is kind of up in the air.
I completely agree with both of you guys. Plain and simple to me, it's the battle at the end of the day will be Caleb versus the Chicago culture. Plain and simple.
Yeah, just drop my pen.
Because we've seen it. The talent is there, but he's got new guys he's got to get locked in with, right? And he has just the one off season coming in. Yes, there are veterans, so they can help him maybe learn faster. But how valued is Eberflus as a coach now, because he's going to have new coordinators again. He's going to have a new quarterback again. Yep. And that's just kind of how Chicago has been, though. Year after year, you have a new system, new coach. Right. You have something new every year. So, they got to kind of lock in now, because it seems like they're set up for the future, but it's you can't mess this up right now.
And you can't do worse than you did last year either, right? This was a 7-10 football team. Yeah. If you take a step back, what does that say about the team, Caleb potentially, because everyone is already assuming Caleb is better than Justin Fields is now.
Mm-hmm.
If you're 7-10 or worse, that's an indictment on Eberflus and Caleb.
And Chicago did make a ton of efforts this offseason to get better. And I will say, I think Chicago learned from what they did with Fields, where they didn't really have anything around him and just kind of threw him into a bad situation. They made sure Caleb Williams is coming into a situation where he's ready to theoretically succeed. They got him a running back one in DeAndre Swift. They already have DJ Moore, who's a top 15 wide receiver. They added Keenan Allen, who's a top 10 receiver. They signed Gerald Everett. They did what they needed to do to give Caleb weapons. So it's up to him to figure it out, and hopefully,
Key's protection now, right? Because we've seen Caleb can do good on the run, right? But NFL's a different business. When he's got guys like that coming at him every second, we saw what happened to Bryce Young.
And he's got to stay in the pocket more, too.
And that's key, because these guys will get to him quick.
And the USC's O-line not great, so maybe if you actually give him an O-line, that can help force him to stay in the pocket.
He'll have to learn how to play. Results. He'll have to learn how to play more in structure.
Yeah, for sure.
Patrick Mahomes is great at playing out of structure, but he's elite at playing in structure too, and that's what Caleb Williams is going to have to figure out in order to hit his potential.
Absolutely. On to 2.
Yeah, and you're on the clock. This is really where the draft
really starts.
I think there's a lot of question marks still.
Washington Commanders. They have been slowly falling in the NFL universe over the years due to ownership and all these troubles and just, different coaches not finding the right guys to get you there. You see hopeful, shots, over the years, you had Alex Smith as a quarterback position. You had, Dwayne Haskins, RIP. That didn't work out. RG3 even, that's crazy. And in the past, right? And that was like one of the worst handled situations, Yeah,
and then Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, it's like we're going way back. But and you have these guys that are there, but the situations don't pan out well, and they go. Yeah. They're either injured or they go. And then as of recent, you have Sam Howell. You think Sam Howell can be the next guy, and he had a lot of talent, but it was very, it fluctuated a lot, and there just wasn't everything he needed around him for that team to succeed. Mm-hmm. So obviously QB is the main factor here. You got this would be the first full year of new ownership. Yeah. You got new coach in Dan Quinn, who was also a questionable hire at times with the Commanders. Did they like it? Maybe there were better options out there, but because there were a lot of ties to what's his name, who ended up going to Seattle.
Mike McDonald.
Mike McDonald, him, and then there were some talks at times, with Ben Johnson that fell through, and then I think people just disrespected Vrabel too much, honestly.
Yeah.
But going forward, I think QB is absolutely the need, and obviously you look at Drake May. And then you look at pretty much him and Jaden Daniels. I know, obviously, outside of that, you can look at, I think, the only other option right now you can look at is J.J. McCarthy from this standpoint. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's straight up Jaden Daniels and Drake May. No doubt about it. Now, you look at Drake May. To me, he has a lot more NFL intangibles. He has a better skill set, to me. He has more room to grow in a sense. Obviously, he had raw moments at UNC. You can shout out Jaden Daniels. He won the Heisman. He was put on an absolute clinic, especially in the SEC. That's not always easy to do either. But, you look at – you think that somewhere in the back of some people's minds, does a UNC QB bother them? They just took a shot with one, even though this one probably could have had the potential to be better than Sam Howell. Mm-hmm. But breaking it down, in my opinion, at the end of the day, I think the best option – especially with Cliff Kingsbury being the new OC over there in Washington, I think they should take Jaden Daniels.
Okay.
And that's my pick at 2.
Okay.
I like the pick here. Washington has an underrated group of receivers, and they did lose Curtis Samuel, so that's kind of a big loss. He was a big factor for them last year. But it was also a weird kind of system they ran with under Eric Bieniemy. I think they'll clean it up this year. I like Quinn. I like Cliff Kingsbury as the OC. I think they're doing some things that are interesting, and they added some old guys on the offseason, right? Austin Eckler, Bobby Wagner,
Zach
Ertz, just some real vets, right? But they're building, in my opinion, they're building a team full of adults in the room. And I think that's a good spot for Jane Daniels to come in because we've heard in the past that he's had some locker room issues right at Arizona State. Nobody liked him on the team. Goes to LSU, seems to have the love and buy-in from everyone, but he totally dominated. And I think what you're getting out of him is a guy that's going to be a playmaker right away. And you're going to a situation in Washington where the ownership is a little sketchy still, not really sure what to make of the Josh Harris and co. But I think the team is solid enough for Daniels to come in and be competitive right away. And I think that's the difference between Daniels and May, is May's going to take some time to grow. I think Daniels will come in and immediately be a dog. And he should be. He's 23 years old. He's had plenty of years in college, and he just won the Heisman. So he should be able to come in right away and be that guy for Washington. So I like the pick here. I'm jealous of the pick, honestly.
Yeah, no, I think it's a solid pick. Like you guys mentioned, they brought in Austin Eckler to give him a run game. They have good weapons already in the receiver room. I think he's set up to have the weapons that he needs to succeed. And with his scrambling ability, I think that that gives Kingsbury something to use with his experience with those types of quarterbacks. So I like the pick.
Absolutely. On to pick 3?
Yeah, no
Said.
complaints there. Yeah, I mean, it seems that way too with like Schefter recently saying they're kind of honing in on Daniels. I mean, who knows what to believe now? But it does feel like it's going to be Caleb and then Daniels. So this is where it gets really interesting, right?
Patriots on the clock.
I think there's still some question marks concerning Washington, but I think Daniels likely ends up there. So New England is really where we start to say what gives, right? This is a team that I've been very critical of this offseason. I've had plenty of conversations with these two about it. I think they've been lazy. I don't think they tried hard enough. I think Elliott Wolf, who's not the GM but is the GM.
The de facto GM.
He's the de facto GM, which is not good. He's running the draft, but he doesn't have a title. I hate that. He basically made no moves. Our biggest move was KJ Osborne. Okay, that's awesome. I don't really know what to say. I mean, this is a team that hasn't had an offense since Brady left. This is a team that's been good defensively, and I'm glad they kept some guys on the team, like Kyle Duggar. I like the extension there. But this team needed some sort of shakeup offensively, because if you're going to draft the rookie QB, like I'm going to right here, you got to give him something to do. He's going to be out there running around. The offensive line isn't good. They still don't have a tackle, right? They still have a right tackle or a left tackle. They don't have a receiver. They have like 4 wide receiver 3s. Their tight end situation is a joke. Hunter Henry is a mediocre to average tight end, and the running game took a big step back last year. And Ramondre Stevenson cannot do it all. You bring in Antonio Gibson as a third down back, but it's not going to light the world on fire. So this is a really bad situation, and the rookie QB that's coming in is walking into a train wreck, and they're going to be given the biggest burden out of any quarterback taken in this draft to really bring the franchise up from the ashes. And that guy to me is Drake May. I'm taking May here for the simple reason that he is raw, but he has all the talent in the world to be the next Josh Allen, the next Justin Herbert. And those are the comps that he gets when you're talking about his ceiling. This is a situation where a rookie QB cannot come in and start right away, in my opinion. They need time to grow, develop, and because of the talent around him, it's not going to be pretty. So I like Jacoby Brissett taking some of the early bullets, taking some of the early punches from opposing teams. This is going to be a really bad team for the entirety of 2024. They probably are going to be back in the top 5 next year. So why not get your guy, sit him for a year or majority of the year, unless he actually is the best quarterback and gives you the best chance to win. But I think they need to develop the roster entirely and let Drake May kind of just rise up as the roster rises up. Still only 21 years old. He's got plenty of time to develop and get better and to become an NFL caliber quarterback, like I think he's going to be a Pro Bowl, perennial All-Star. So the pick for me is Drake May, and I'm nervous about this pick. I am. I think they're going to trade back or not take Drake May and take McCarthy. but or at least that's what I'm fearful of, and I'm talking myself into that's what they're going to do. But I'm hoping they stay composed and just take the best quarterback available, which, in my opinion, is Drake May.
Yeah, we've all talked about the Patriots quite a bit off screen, and I mean, not every quarterback has the luxury to be able to come in to like what Caleb Williams is, where the team with the number 1 overall pick actually isn't the worst team in the league. Washington, even their situation, they're pretty good, but they have a lot of work to do too. They're in New England, they're rebuilding, and you kind of have to rebuild slow. And if you're doing it the right way, I understand needing to put a structure around him to succeed. You don't always have the luxury to be able to do that. You can't spend all your cap space and use all your assets to rebuild, just to have a mediocre season with your quarterback. But I understand that Drake May is going to probably struggle. Whatever quarterback comes in here is going to probably struggle, and that is going to be a tough situation. So hopefully, the new coaching staff and this, and whichever quarterback it is, in this case, Drake May, can come in and kind of power through these couple of years that's going to take in order to get the team to where they're going to be competitive. But sometimes that builds your character, to kind of rise up from the bottom. But no, I think it's a good pick. I mean, they desperately need a quarterback, and what better way to start your rebuild than with the franchise quarterback that you can kind of build around. So I like the pick.
And some are saying he has almost as much talent as Caleb Williams, like in terms of just raw quarterback talent.
It's a good quarterback class for sure.
Yeah, it's just so unpredictable what's going to happen with him and that pick.
Yeah.
So I don't know where we're going to go. We'll see what happens going forward because, yes, like we said, someone's signing up to struggle at 3.
I mean, here's the thing. If you take Drake May's 2022-2023 tape, I think he's easily the number 1 pick last year, or at least in the conversation for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he'd be right there with Caleb this year. But because his 2023 tape was so bad, and because UNC as a whole kind of struggled, right? I mean, he lost a ton of talent on offense. They still won, I think, 8 games, but still, it wasn't like a superb year. But if you take his 2022 tape, he'd been in contention for 1 last year and right there for 1 this year. So
crazy. All right, very interesting pick here. Cardinals at 4. Tyler's on the clock.
Yeah, so the Cardinals had an interesting offseason. They kind of, added some pieces. They traded for Desmond Ridder to be a backup. They did some things. But they did trade away Hollywood Brown. And Hollywood was really their only competent wide receiver. And now they don't really have one. And Kyler Murray is probably looking around like, who am I going to throw the ball to?
Yep.
And I don't think this is a situation where the Cardinals really want to do a full-on rebuild. They believe that they have their franchise quarterback. I'm not the biggest Kyler Murray fan myself, but I understand that he's got the talent and he needs some weapons. And I will say, we were talking about this off camera as well, I think the Arizona Cardinals, this could be a situation where they could be fielding offers for this pick. Not to say that they don't have great options at this pick, because they definitely do. But this is kind of like a 4-quarterback draft in most people's eyes, and then there's quite a bit of a tier break before you get to the Penix tier. And this will be a pick where Arizona's going to offer it up for, if they get an offer they can't refuse for a team that wants to come up and get J.J. McCarthy, they may trade back and stay within range to still get their wide receiver. But in this case, we're not doing trades, and arguably the best wide receiver prospect to come out since Jamar Chase is on the board in Marvin Harrison Jr. And that's an easy pick, no doubt about it. It's going to be Marvin Harrison. The Biletnikoff winner for the best receiver in college football. Back-to-back years of 1,200 receiving yards is insane. Back-to-back years being a unanimous All-American. Obviously the son of Marvin Harrison of the Indianapolis Colts, and he's got everything. Marvin Harrison Jr. has everything. There's really nothing that he can't do. This is going to be, whoever ends up with Marvin Harrison is going to be extremely happy with what they get. I don't think there's really any possibility Marvin Harrison isn't a number one receiver, at least a average number one receiver in the NFL, with the potential to be an all-pro, top 5 unanimous, undoubted receiver in the league. So we could go on and on about the talent of Marvin Harrison, but I think everybody who's a draft geek understands how talented he is. And if Arizona does keep this pick and they don't get what they're looking for, or just love Marvin Harrison too much to where they are unwilling to trade it, they're going to be extremely happy with this pick. And I think Kyler Murray will be extremely happy with this pick as well.
I mean, easy Hall of Fame potential, right? I mean, it would take Minnesota 11, 23, and then a first next year to pry Arizona off this pick, right? I mean, because that's how much I think we all love Marvin Harrison Jr. And the NFL world loves Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, it's automatic. It's going to take a lot to get Arizona off this pick.
And the Cards got put in a perfect situation, right? The teams in front of them need a quarterback. So unless there's a crazy, crazy trade, which would more than likely only happen right now at 3, they're sitting pretty.
And with the way the quarterback situation is kind of playing out in the NFL, I mean, having a Kyler Murray, honestly, on a relatively cheap deal, all things considered, like the way quarterbacks are getting paid, and just the overall lack of depth with the quarterback position. I mean, Kyler Murray is still a top 12, 15 quarterback. That can win you games, and that can get you to the postseason, and anything can happen from there. So I love this pick. Great work, Tyler. And I love that you did not go with neighbors here, because I think that's, not that I don't think they're not similar in talent, but I just think it's almost like prospect fatigue. It's going to be Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah. And I think if it wasn't for the value of the quarterback position in the NFL, I think you could argue Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best player in this entire draft. I
agree.
It's between him and Caleb, and like I told you, I'm not a Caleb fan, so in my opinion, Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best prospect in this draft. So to get him at 4, you can't be upset with that value whatsoever. So
No, I agree.
100%.
You get the Jim Harbaugh experience.
Oh, yeah. All right, Chargers. The Harbaugh era has arrived, and him and his new GM had to handle some business, because talk about cap horror.
Yeah.
I mean, you were talking, it was absolutely insane. I mean, you look at the names they lost. They lost Mike Williams. They had to trade Keenan Allen. They got rid of Eckler. I mean, even Eric Kendricks, that's still a great piece to lose. And I mean, where do you go from here? You've had these inconsistent years that have hurt Justin Herbert, and he's also gotten hurt, which has hurt those years as well.
Absolutely.
So it's like, you're not saying there's still time with him, but just like you're losing good years because he was that good coming in right away. So now, I know they won't go running back, even though, I don't think Gus Edwards is going to carry you to the promised land. But, I mean, Harbaugh football is a different way of football, right? He likes to run heavy, so it depends on what he does there. I think they do probably take a running back later in the draft, not urgently right now. Mm-hmm. So the big debate...
Blake Corum, possibly?
Yeah, but,
there is no Bijan or Gibbs in this draft.
Yeah,
right?
That's the thing.
If this was a Bijan or Gibbs draft, I could see Bijan being a possibility here at 5.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think they definitely go offense with this pick. Now, early on, before all this Keenan Allen, Mike Williams stuff, right? You're looking at them and like, they need another offensive weapon. Brock Bowers was the big talk here at this pick, because Gerald Everett was good, but he wasn't all that. I mean, Brock Bowers is one of the best tight ends we've seen in years, coming out. Obviously it was a great, last year was a great rookie tight end class. But, he's like the solo man this year, and he's carrying it on his shoulders. But I feel like Herbert just needs a 1. He just needs it. I don't think Josh Palmer's enough to be a 1. And who are the other receivers they got out there? I don't even remember.
Guyton.
Well, they have Quentin Johnston.
Oh, yeah,
yes.
QJ. See, but
last year's first
and it's
round
so
pick.
Debatable, right? Because, could QJ step up? Yes. Do I think he will to what he needs to? No.
Okay, so, yeah, I mean, I think that this is a interesting pick for the Chargers because I really think that this could be a trade-out situation. We talked about the Cardinals, this being a trade-back situation for a quarterback. The thing with the Chargers here is you mentioned how they were in some cap problem. Well, the best way to get yourself out of that is to pick up some draft picks, get some cheap contracts on your talented players on cheap contracts and really fix that. So I could totally see the Chargers weighing that option. And I'll just say, as far as Neighbors is concerned, this is a great prospect. He's number 2 wide receiver in this class, but he's the number 1 wide receiver in just about any other class. In the last 5 to 7 years, the only 2 prospects in the wide receiver position better than him are Jamar Chase and Marvin Harrison. And so this is not a consolation prize for them whatsoever. Joe Alt is also a great prospect at the tackle position. You know, the tackle position as a whole isn't the most talked about position in the draft community. It's not, offensive line is just not a position we all like to really talk about much or look into much. But Joe Alt is a great prospect. Whoever ends up with him is going to be extremely happy with their left tackle for the next 10 to 15 years. And so it'll be a really tough decision for the Chargers to decide whether to move back, take Neighbors, take Alt. You know, Bowers is there. But I really think their best option would be Neighbors, Alt, or trade back. But I think either or, whatever they decide to do, would be a great option for them. And I really like Neighbors as a player.
I have no disagreements.
Lockstep.
All right.
And that brings us to the New York Football Giants at 6.
Make Kevin proud.
It's a tough spot to be in, right? I mean, you have a quarterback in Daniel Jones that you don't trust long term. I think that's kind of obvious, but there also are no weapons on offense. They did acquire Brian Burns in a trade with the Panthers.
It's a great pickup.
Great pickup there. But this offense needs help, right? I mean, I think the pick is 100% going to be an offensive player. It's just if J.J. McCarthy slides them at 6, is that the pick? Or with 2 wide receivers off the board now, do you go with Rome Odunze? God, it's such a tough pick, and I don't really.
Because also what's their O-line been like these days? Not good either.
No, and they probably could use an offensive lineman, but I mean, honestly, I do not envy the Giants here. It's a really tough pick to make. Ultimately, though, I think they land on a receiver. I think they'll end up getting Neighbors just based off of a trade up. I do see either Arizona or the Chargers trading back and getting a ton of capital for that pick. But the way it's shaking out right now, I think they just stand there and take Rome Odunze. You know, it's not the pick that I would make if I were running the Giants. And I guess it's kind of counterintuitive here. But I do think it's the pick that they're going to make because they believe that they need somebody on the outside. I mean, you just lost Saquon Barkley. You have literally nothing on offense. I mean, the only offensive situation that I really think is worse than the Giants is the Patriots. So, I mean, you got to, at some point, start stacking some talent here.
Because who's a running back now?
It's Devin Singletary.
So you got Singletary, and then who do you have? You have Wan'Dale Robinson and Jalen Hyatt on the outside right now?
Yeah, and Rome Odunze will give you the physical presence, but also the route running. So he's a perfect prospect for this Giants team.
I saw Darren Waller's considering retirement as well. He hasn't even officially decided that he's returning, so that could be their entire offensive weapons. So yeah, I mean, offensive weapon is definitely something they need here. It's really tough for the Giants front office because 2 years ago Daniel Jones had a great season. He was a great player and he earned himself an extension. Last year he was awful, and so it's like you as a front office have to make the decision this offseason which Daniel Jones is the real Daniel Jones or is it somewhere in between. Because if you think the Daniel Jones of last year is the Daniel Jones that is going to be, you know, what he's going to be for the future, you really need to consider quarterback. But if you think that he's closer to who he was 2 years ago, then Rome Odunze makes a ton of sense because you have no offensive weapons. And, you know, this is a great wide receiver class. Can't emphasize that enough because the wide receiver 3 in this class is a wide receiver 1. Rome Odunze is a wide receiver 1 in most other classes.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
This is a great pick, and he'd be a great player for him. And, you know, part of the reason Daniel Jones might have stunk was because he didn't have any weapons, right? And Darren Waller, the only weapon he did have was battling injuries all year. So maybe you give him Odunze, see if that fixes him, and most of your offensive problems could be resolved.
And if not, you move off of Daniel Jones next year. You already have a wide receiver 1 for whatever quarterback you're bringing in next year, and you can kind of figure out the rest from there. And I do love that with Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze, each receiver is getting drafted as the number one wideout on their team. I think that's just a testament to their talent and to really, I mean, just the situations that a lot of teams find themselves in. Really, it's just amazing that it's working out this way. 3 straight quarterbacks and then 3 straight receivers. But on to Tennessee at 7.
Yeah, so this is the easiest pick if this is how it falls.
For sure.
In my opinion. Tennessee, they had quite an offseason. They added Calvin Ridley. They just traded for L'Jarius Sneed and gave him a massive contract. They head-scratchingly went out and signed Tony Pollard, which is quite interesting, and they signed Chidobe Awuzie. So they have 2, really good defensive backs. They got a wide receiver 1. They still have Treylon Burks who can still figure things out. They have a running back. It's really starting to. What's that?
Is Hopkins still going to be there?
Hopkins is still there. They have Will Levis in year 2, which some people believe could be a breakout quarterback this year.
That offense, why not?
And I mean, you fixed your you fixed your defense in the offseason with your defensive backs.
Yep.
You run this card up for Joe Alt, and you get yourself your franchise left tackle and complete this offense, because Joe Alt is no slouch. He's a fantastic offensive lineman, fantastic tackle prospect. First team All-American. 2 straight years. He's a fantastic player, and he's a Pro Bowl left tackle, almost certainly. So, I mean, there's not much more to say because, tackles aren't really the position to go nuts over, but this is a fantastic pick. And if he's still there at pick 7, which I don't think would happen, if this somehow fell to them, this is the Penei Sewell falling to the Detroit Lions pick. You run this up, and then the front office goes crazy in the draft room because you just got yourself a top 5 prospect at pick 7. So
yeah, for sure.
Awesome pick for Tennessee.
Nothing more I can really add. I'm in agreement.
To me, I in my personal when I was looking through other drafts, I'm like, to me that's the most locked pick to me. Joe Alt to Tennessee.
If he's there, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, to me the Chargers or the Giants would be the ones to take him if he doesn't slide to the Titans. Atlanta.
What an off season.
It seems like don't bother the offense anymore, right?
Yeah.
You got your quarterback that you wanted. Yes, it is Kirk Cousins. You'll see what happens with him. You have a head coach now who seems like he knows what he's gonna do. He is a defensive coach, but he's gonna make sure that things are done right so that offense can thrive because it has too much talent to not thrive in some form, especially in that division. With Bijan and you got still Drake London has still that potential. You still have Pitts sitting out there.
You grabbed Darnell Mooney.
Yes, that's exactly who I was trying to. I was going through my mind. So you have an offense set up, and as long as Kirk is protected, it should run fine. Defense is key now, right? You have a decent secondary with Jesse Bates and who else is back there with him?
AJ Terrell.
AJ Terrell, yes.
Yep.
Thank you. We were just talking about that yesterday. AJ Terrell and Jesse Bates. So now you think, there's great options up here if you still want to boost more in the secondary. You have a good Cooper DeJean is a great cornerback coming out. I know there's a debate of him playing corner, but it can go either way. Big sleeper, Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo. I think there's so much more to his ceiling than, what we think. Obviously he played well in both of the Senior Bowl and did he play in the I think it was just a Senior Bowl where he played and he shined out. Mm-hmm. But so there's potential there. But now, because the secondary is a little more, put together, do you go to the line where you maybe need something more with, a Newton or a Latu or a Dallas Turner, or I think obviously those guys are a little better. You could still go to obviously Jarrett Verse, if you like him coming out of there. I think there obviously are better guys here and compared to him. To me, it's all preference to them. What do they see? What do they value more? And I think they should be smarter and try to bolster up that defensive line So where do you go from there? Obviously, you still have Byron Murphy, the second out of Texas, who's a great boy, but he just is going through some off the field issues, right? With his, is he the one who got the DUI?
No.
No, it was
who's the other one? Who's the other guy? My bad.
It was another defensive tackle in the class.
Yeah.
I forgot his name. My bad. Apologies to that guy. Plain and simple to me, I think the best fit for them, you go down a little bit, to me, is Dallas Turner. Because with his experience under Saban in Alabama, he just knows how to play well. He's professional. He'll lock in, and you just need kind of like a guy who comes in but kind of plays like a veteran. And I think he'll help get to the quarterback. They really just need something up front because it's easier for teams to just move on them with their run games, and they just need something up there.
Yeah, it's a weak edge class, weak defensive class overall in terms of depth, but Dallas Turner is a fine prospect. I think when you look at Atlanta, right, they did so many good things in the offseason. Could they trade back here potentially?
Absolutely.
Just kind of acquire later picks and just kind of build up on depth instead of taking a Turner here at 8 where you might feel like you're reaching. I could see that. But if they like Turner enough to take him at 8, they're going to take him at 8. And I think that's a fine pick. So they need edge help. He is that. So I think it's a good spot for him to land.
I'll push back a little bit on that there's not a lot of depth in this class on the defensive side. I think that the top-end talent isn't there because the offensive talent is so good. I feel like the defensive depth is there in this class. But as far as the best defensive player in this class, it is, most people believe it's Dallas Turner. He's in that conversation because of the top defensive talent in this class is very debatable. There's not like a clear-cut edge one, a clear-cut corner one, a clear-cut linebacker one. It's kind of what your preference is. I think Dallas Turner is one of the top defensive players, if not the top defensive player in this class. I think this is about the range that you could see him go. I think 8 to Atlanta is like the start of where you could see him go. Somewhere between like 8 and 12, I think, is when you start seeing the defensive players start to come off the board. He's a great player. He had 15 and a half tackles for loss last year, 11 sacks. He's a great player, and I think that, like you said, with Raheem Morris coming in as a defensive coach, you need to give him defensive talent, and I would consider defensive back here because I really like Quinyon Mitchell and even Terrion Arnold. Some people debate could be corner one in this class, but you already have A.J. Terrell, so you get your bookend, top defensive end, in the class from some people's point of view, and you're on your way. You start to get a pass rush in Atlanta.
Absolutely. To the Bears?
Yeah, Bears are back on the clock here.
So much can happen with this.
I do think they'll trade down with this pick, or at least try to trade down. But, you can never really, you can say you want to trade down, but another team's got to trade up. And I think the Bears could be caught in a position where they just have to kind of take the pick. And to me, you got Caleb at 1. It's a no-brainer. You got to go offensive line here. You got the receivers. But you need somebody outside of Darnell Wright on the outside tackle position. And to me, you're really looking at a few guys here, based off of the rankings we have. Shout out to Dane Brugler. Troy Fatanu, Olu Fashanu, and J.C. Latham. Those are kind of the big guys. And then Talise Fuaga out of Oregon State. To me, as I'm reading this over, I think the shine on Olu Fashanu has kind of faded a bit, and you're just seeing a guy like Troy Fatanu rise up, and with his versatility, with his ability to kind of play inside and outside, I think that's really valuable, especially when you have an offensive line that needs more support, that needs more help. Having a guy that you can shift in and out of spots in case there's an injury that goes down is big. And I like that he's a little bit older too. I think you're getting a guy that's got just ready to take it on, and you're not really waiting on him to grow into the position. He's going to be able to go right away, and I think that's exactly what Chicago wants to do. So I'm going to take Troy Fautanu, offensive tackle from Washington here at number 9.
I like that pick.
Yeah, yep, that's a good pick. Like we said already, there's not a ton to sit and go in depth about with offensive line, but Fautanu can play tackle. He's played left tackle and left guard at Washington throughout his career, so you have some flexibility there. And Darnell Wright, is your right tackle.
Yep.
So Fautanu could be your left tackle or your left guard. That position is still up for grabs there in Chicago. So whatever he plays best in camp, you put him there. And like you said, you can move him around depending on if you like your left tackle better than your guard. You plug him in at left guard. But great pick, and no better way to start your draft than to get your franchise quarterback and your possible franchise, tackle or guard, and to help him out and keep him protected and keep him clean.
Absolutely. I mean, if I couldn't imagine Joe Alt falling that far.
If he did, it just wrap it up. Chicago won the draft. It's over
that's
at that
for
point.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think.
Even as Lions fans, we would have to say, Chicago won the draft.
I don't think Alt gets anywhere past Tennessee. If Alt's there, Tennessee will take him, and that'll be that. But
I don't know. Going forward, we'll see what happens. Any more statements?
No.
To the Jets.
Okay, so the New York Jets.
Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, this is
He's back.
Quite an interesting spot here. Aaron Rodgers is back. And the Jets made a ton of moves in the offseason that pretty much make the statement, we're not waiting around. We're trying to win right now and trying to capitalize on Aaron Rodgers' window because he might only have another 2-3 years, if that. They added Mike Williams. They went out and got Hassan Reddick. They signed Tyron Smith, and they traded for Morgan Moses. I mean, they went out and they swung big in the offseason and got themselves perennial, lock 'em and loaded starters. So you look at what they could do here, and to me, it is between Brock Bowers and adding Rodgers a weapon, on offense, or continuing to add on the offensive line, knowing that Tyron Smith is in his late 30s and isn't going to be around for much longer. So to me, it's between Olu Fashanu or Brock Bowers. And this is a tough one. I'm going to go with Brock Bowers because I think that between the two, Bowers is just a slightly better prospect. But I will say, I know like Evan was saying, Fashanu has dropped a little bit in the NFL draft media rankings, but I still think Fashanu is a great prospect and a top tackle. So it'll be a tough decision, but Brock Bowers makes a ton of sense. Pair him with Mike Williams, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, and you got all sorts of weapons for Aaron Rodgers to play with. So I think you add a top-end tight end. That'll be a fun offense to watch for sure.
It's time for Aaron Rodgers to move past his former teammates.
Right.
But it also goes what you were saying. They're trying to win now.
Right.
And Brock Bowers gives you more win now than Fashanu does.
Right. Fashanu is more of a, insurance policy for when Tyron Smith goes, but Brock Bowers is more of a you plug him in and you just load up that offense even more.
I agree.
Yep.
Oh, goodness. I like that pick. I can't disagree with that. I agree. It's pretty much, do you want to protect Aaron Rodgers or do you want to go and take best player available and be about it? So, can't agree with that. And that's very Jets of them, obviously, that's probably was their thing. We need some kind of offensive guy to, lineman to bring in, which they did, so we can go do what we want to do.
Yep.
So now, more than likely at 11 here, this pick won't exist to the Vikings because they're probably going to try to use both of their picks to move up and get a quarterback in this draft.
Yeah.
But being that it is at 11, this is where you start thinking, okay, it's quarterback time because Kirk is gone and you've spent you've brought in so many different guys around Kirk just to see if there's an option over the years.
Yep.
I mean, you brought in Kyle Slaughter, Kellen Mond, Even you had the Pastronaut last year taking over to see if he could be something behind. With Kirk Cousins going down.
Josh Dobbs.
You also had what's his name?
Nick Mullins.
Nick Mullins. I mean, you've been running through guy after guy, whether it's signing him, in free agency or from the draft, and you just couldn't find anybody else, and you were hoping to keep Kirk, and he walks away from you, and he heads to Atlanta. So we know it's going to be the Vikings pretty much are going to be headhunting for a quarterback. So the logical thing here is take a quarterback, right? Mm-hmm. It definitely wouldn't be Penix for sure. And obviously, the next best up guys are 100% JJ, and then you kind of go to Bo Nix. Now, Bo Nix is a very questionable. You could look at him as, since he's so much older, he has the experience. You may like that. Mm-hmm. But there is the ceiling of McCarthy is so unpredictable that, you may take the value in that, and you see what kind of leader he can be on and off the field, and you may like that. So, to me, plain and simple, you got to go JJ McCarthy here. That's just the best option. Because going forward, he is younger, so the age thing is not a concern with like the other quarterbacks. Injury history, like with Penix, and he's just a well-rounded like player and individual. You don't always have to have a guy who's just gonna like outshine everybody on the team. Sometimes you just need a guy who's gonna be a facilitator and like a game manager. I know some people, like Cam Newton, don't like. He likes to call people game managers and doesn't believe in them. But sometimes it's the value of a game manager, and also what Jim Harbaugh has taught him can be helpful going forward.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely the right pick. I think he's a little corny, kind of like Jim Harbaugh, but he is a leader. He does have good traits. He has good qualities, and kind of to your point, if he can be Kirk Cousins, but add the athleticism, add the escapability, getting outside the pocket, some of the things he did at Michigan where he was able to extend plays, you're getting almost the same quarterback in a way, just with more upside. Mm-hmm. He's going to have to replicate that, and he's going to have to take on a lot more than he did at Michigan. That's the big knock on him, obviously, just the lack of reps, really. He started a lot of games, but what was he really doing in those games? Kind of handed off to Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. So that's really what we're going to need to see out of JJ is, can he handle an NFL offense? Can he handle being the guy that is depended on? Mm-hmm. And that's really just the questions that remain at JJ. But I think he has the talent to be that. I think he can be a Pro Bowl quarterback. I've said it on record. Like, if the Patriots take him, all right, like, let's go. But it's just a lot of unknown with him. Probably the most unknown. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what is the scariest thing about JJ.
Yeah, so I think in the real when the draft actually comes up, I don't think there's a chance JJ's at 11. It's been reported, and it's pretty known at this point, that the NFL likes JJ McCarthy a lot more than the media and the fans do. It sounds like it's almost pretty certain JJ is going to go top 5 to 7. But for this exercise, because we couldn't do trades, we did mention the trade-up opportunities, around Arizona, Chargers range, and that's where a team would come up for JJ. But I'll just say the reason why they like JJ so much is because he is uber talented, and he didn't get a lot of opportunities to show that talent in the games. But I think teams actually liked that too, because even though he had all this talent, doesn't have as much talent as Caleb Williams. But, for example, like Caleb Williams has a ton of talent, and he was kind of told to just go out there and just make plays and freelance and do what he had to do. And McCarthy was he took his talent, reined it in, and kind of made him a game manager. And I think teams like that because they're like, not only does he have a ton of talent, he's already been coached on how to manage the game and not just play backyard football. And so you put those things together. You put together the fact he has a lot of raw talent, and he's been coached up on how to manage the game and just play the point guard of the offense. Teams are really excited about that. And so if he was there, I think this would be a great pick, an amazing pick for the Vikings. I'm a Michigan fan, but I'm not biased towards McCarthy in any way. I do think has a lot more talent than he showed in college, and it excites teams. And for this case, I think the Vikings are going to be doing everything they can to package their 2 first-round picks to go up and get JJ, because I think that there's a very small possibility that this actually does happen, because we didn't do trades. This is how it fell, but yeah, I think you do need to sit him though. So they signed Sam Darnold. You start Sam Darnold for almost the whole season. If you'd ideally like to start him for an entire season without having to play JJ, because he needs a lot of work to put it all together and to be able to play in a pro style offense and not just turn around and hand the ball off. So, get those reps in that Evan was talking about. Mm-hmm. So if you have a situation where you can sit him down, Minnesota could be scary with Justin Jefferson and a player like J.J. McCarthy and his talent. So
and they have a great young coach too, in
who just knows the game of offense so well.
I feel he could be I feel like he'd be one of those guys who could actually work well with JJ.
Yeah. I think it's a good. 100%. I think it would be a great marriage.
Yep.
All right, so on to Denver. One of the stranger off seasons, I think, of all the teams. It's been quiet, but also loud in a way. Losing Russell Wilson, just letting him go, but still losing him.
Broncos country.
Let's ride.
Yeah.
Trade away Jerry Jeudy. Letting Justin Simmons go. I mean, those were 3 big names last year. 3 of their biggest names. And then you only bring in Josh Reynolds. I mean, it's ugly. They don't really have a quarterback.
Yeah, you haven't
Their
addressed.
offensive line is in tatters. Their defense is not great. I mean, this is a horrible situation. But they're picking 12. It's not like they were an awful team last year. I mean, they're right there at 12. So what do they do here? To me,
I mean, they could reach for a quarterback, but they could. That would be quite a reach. I know what most people do not.
They'd be wasting what they need.
Most people think Knicks is a second round, maybe an early second round pick. So you could maybe trade. You could trade back if you're Denver and move into the back end of the first round, and then take Knicks there, where you still get the 5th-year option.
And I do think that's likely.
Yeah.
I do think they're in play to trade up for J.J. McCarthy as well.
Yeah,
it's going to cost them a lot more.
Yeah,
but I mean, I think they got to make a move. But in this exercise, quarterback is not on the table. And, I mean, I saw Russell Wilson get sacked way too many times last year. And I think Sean Payton's saying the same thing. And if he's thinking trade up early or trade up from the early second round to the first, we got to get a guy to protect a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix. And it's a guy that we've already mentioned. It's going to be Olu Fashanu here, the 3rd offensive tackle off the board. And one of my favorite prospects. I loved him last year. The shine wore off him a little bit, like we already stated, but he's still young, still has a ton of potential. And, I mean, we're talking about a guy that could easily be a Pro Bowl left tackle for a decade plus. Just has to put it together. But I think Sean Payton is looking at his team and saying, I got to get a guy that can protect the quarterback. And if I'm going to get a guy that can protect the quarterback, it's going to be Olu Fashanu here, a guy that's young and is going to be able to grow with the rookie QB. So I like Fashanu here. It's a tough spot if you're Denver.
Yeah.
But I think this is the best case scenario.
If this is the situation that pans out for Denver, this is probably one of the worst situations that you could envision, because you either need they're just in a dead zone. They're behind the quarterback run of the top quarterbacks, and they're in front of the tier 2 run of the next quarterbacks, and they need a quarterback. They didn't even address it in the offseason. They didn't sign a Sam Darnold. They didn't sign a Jacoby Brissett. They didn't sign
for Fields.
Yeah, they didn't do anything to say, you know what, we at least have something that we can lean on. The next team here that's going to be picking, Gardner Minshew. They didn't do nothing to say, you know what, we have a stopgap. So in some way, shape, or form, Denver has to address quarterback in this draft, whether it be first round, second round, or so be it. And there's some mid-round quarterbacks that you could maybe sit and develop, but this is a bad situation. I mean, Olu Fashanu, that's no knock on Olu. It's just they need a quarterback. It's the biggest hole on their team, and Sean Payton can't do anything with Jared Stidham. He's not going anywhere. So
no. But that offensive line has been awful for years. And their defense, it improved actually, but it's still not great, right?
Yeah.
And it took them, it took a 70-point drubbing against Miami.
Yeah, that was embarrassing.
I think how many points did he have against the Lions?
30
something. So
Yeah.
like, I mean, there was multiple occasions where the Denver defense just got boat raced. So defense here, like a Quinyon Mitchell, a DB to pair with a Pat Surtain, sure. Maybe a defensive lineman, but ultimately I think you just address that O-line that's been just devastated for years.
Yep. All right.
Disagree. I don't know where. I wouldn't even know where to go with Denver.
It's a really hard pick. It's a really hard pick, and sometimes when you have a hard pick, you just take an offensive lineman, right? I mean, sometimes that's just all you
Can't
do.
hate protection.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the easiest pick, and it's the least controversial.
And
pick.
it's a great tackle class. It's a great offensive line class.
is.
The interior, we haven't even gotten to our interior defensive line guys yet. There's some studs in the interior defense or offensive line that hopefully one can fall to Detroit, but this is a great
know who it
offensive
is.
line class. You know what? Like that's what people are saying. There's second round. There's going to be guys that go in the second round that would be going in first rounds in the other class. So if you have nothing else to pick, you just take these top offensive line prospects in this class, and you just build up that offensive line now because that's where the value is. And if you don't have a need to address, you just take the value. So. Now we're on to 13 with Vegas, and this is a tough situation as well. They're in a similar situation to Denver, although they did get their stopgap quarterback. They did go out and get Gardner Minshew, which I like Gardner Minshew. I think that he can be a low end starter in the league. I think he's a high end backup and a bottom 5 starter, but I still think if he's your starter, he can win you a couple games if you need him to. And so. You know, that might be the situation that they're in. They're in a similar situation where they're behind the quarterback
line.
You know, yeah, they're behind the top end quarterbacks and they're in front of the tier 2 guys. They could do the same thing as Denver. They could trade up, or they could trade back, or they could sit still and take one of the top guys on the board. And you know, I'm kind of looking at a few positions here, but I think offensive line makes some sense. There hasn't been a corner yet that's gone, and there's some value there. You know, Tyrion Arnold and Quinyon Mitchell are the 2 top corners in this class, and depending on, you know, your flavor, you know, either one of those guys are CB1 to other people. But I think I'm going to take... I think I'm going to take Talise Fuaga here from Oregon State. I'm going to take the tackle. I just think that the same thing as Denver. If you're stuck here, if there's not a trade back option, if there's no one calling when you're sitting there at 13 and you weren't able to go up and get J.J. McCarthy and you're kind of stuck, you just take the offensive line. And I think you could have gone J.C. Latham here, who has some tackle guard flexibility, but I like Fuaga a little bit better myself, so that's who I'm going to take. And you just get your left tackle and you figure out quarterback later.
Yeah.
And you know, you got Gardner Minshew for now.
I agree. I like Fuaga.
Yeah.
That's a great pick to me.
I can't disagree at all. I wish I could. I wish I could say, you know, in classic Vegas fashion, they do something crazy here.
Right.
But I think they're going about this really appropriately, right? Hiring Antonio Pierce. Getting a Gardner Minshew, not really, you know, pushing the chips in the table for like a Russell Wilson or something like that, where, okay, now you're creating expectations. And I think they did that last summer by getting Devontae Adams when your quarterback was Jimmy G, right? It just felt a little forced last year. Now it feels like a bit more organic under Antonio Pierce. And I think, you know, he's a football guy, and Fuaga's a football guy. So I just think it makes sense. So I love this pick. I do.
Mm-hmm.
So on to 14, the Saints. Saints are very interesting to me. I know the needs are weird, right?
Yeah.
QB, right? QB is going to be Derek Carr.
Yeah.
Deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wide receiver, you have Chris Olave. You have Rashid Shaheed. Michael Thomas is gone now,
gone, yeah.
So it's about time.
No one signed him yet, as far as I understand. Yeah.
To me, right now, I don't know what they can do. I don't know what Dennis Allen and crew can do to they're kind of just there.
Spark it.
Yeah, spark it. And to me, you might just have to go smart. One of the sides of the line, or a big piece that we have talked about is, do you get a new piece and see if you can move on from Marshawn Lattimore?
Mm-hmm.
And that's I'm kind of
Yep.
I'm kind of thinking the same path there because there's been so many talks about moving on from him, and they might move on from him at the draft.
That's what
Yep.
I'm thinking.
Yep.
So I think it would be, right, you go back, I'm going to go a little change up here, right? I think it would be safe for them to go and maybe get a tackle or defensive lineman, but I think maybe you they do a trade with Lattimore at the draft, and they get some picks, and then they take a corner. And I'm really having a tough debate because to me, I think the better pick might be Quinyon Mitchell, but I feel like to me the better fit might be Terry and Arnold. So I have that back and forth debate.
Yeah.
So I think for this sake, I know it may be debate. I think personally with this one, just in the Saints aspect, I'm going to go with Terry and Arnold here.
All right.
I think he is he's just that similar guy to what Marshawn Lattimore can be. I really still believe in Quinyon Mitchell, but I think this is the better spot for Terry and Arnold.
Yeah, I mean, Terry and Arnold, he's not as fast as Quinyon Mitchell. Ran a 4.5 40, but he's got a good RAS score. He's got a 4.25. He's athletic. He's got some athleticism to him, and I mean, it's a debate between Terry Arnold and Quinyon Mitchell. They're, Brugler has them 10 and 11 on his big board, so you could really go either way. But yeah, I like the thought process that there's been rumors that Lattimore could get dealt. I like Evan's thought process that there are some players that they get dealt during the during the draft when teams miss out on the guy that they want, and Detroit could be one of those. If Detroit, misses out on a couple corners and the board just doesn't shake out Brad Holmes' way, he could call up, New Orleans on day 2 or 3 of the draft and make a trade work with that. And so, and then I think they could go and get a corner and get in front of it. And I like it. I like the pick a lot, and I think Terry and Arnold would be a great fit there.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement, and I just think, the past 3 teams we've done, Denver, Vegas, New Orleans, weird situations, right? You're in a bit of flux, not really sure what your next move is, and to me, they're just taking like best player available almost, and that's kind of what you have to do in the situation, or just lean on what works. Drafting a lineman high, drafting a stud cornerback, arguably the best in the class. I just think it makes sense.
And have you guys noticed that this pick was the first pick that wasn't an offensive lineman, a quarterback, or a wide receiver? We've up to pick 14. We've only picked from 3 positions, 3 positions groups this whole draft, because those are the 3 position groups that are the top end in this class. And so Terry and Arnold, the first player that's not one of the big
Literally.
3 position groups.
Only the second defensive player off the board too.
Oh no, we did have Dallas Turner. So I mean,
but still, the point is made that there's so much offensive talent at the top of this draft. And it's overwhelming, honestly. I mean, when do we 2 of the
and
top
Brock Bowers?
50?
Yeah, if it was between Arnold and Mitchell, that's my decision. But to me, if I didn't focus on the corners much, I probably would have just went and took J.C. Latham because of the diverse, being able to play, tackle and guard.
Right.
So Indianapolis here
on the clock.
Indy's on the clock.
You love this.
I love this pick. Right? I love Anthony Richardson.
We're in agreement on that. I love
awesome.
Anthony.
He's awesome, but he needs to stay healthy. And immediately you're thinking, okay, offensive line, right? But I'm just going to push back for a second.
Pump the brakes.
I'm going to pump the brakes. This is a pick where they have a lot of flexibility. They can't really do a ton wrong here. They brought back a ton of their guys. They didn't really add anyone other than Joe Flacco. But they brought back a ton of their guys. They made sure that the same team is intact. They have their core. But then you look at, all right, their weapons on offense. Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs. I like that. All right, I don't really need to address that. You have Jonathan Taylor too, so I think they're fine there. Defensively, right, I think maybe aging a little bit, and they might look at a Quinyon Mitchell as like that next guy. I love that. So really, to me, it comes down to Quinyon Mitchell, or do they just go with the offensive line and re-solidify what they already got going on there? Gosh, it's a tough pick here. And like I said, they really can't go wrong here. But I think when you can't go wrong, you go BPA. And to me, that's Quinyon Mitchell.
Yep.
I like
I think
that.
that's the
I'm
right
going to
pick.
go with the cornerback out of Toledo, who might be going higher than this on draft night.
No,
Yeah.
it's true. I think
I
both.
think this would be a great pick for Indy.
I think those 14 and 15, both those guys could flop either or. I
Yep.
feel like they both, where we have them is where they would mesh maybe a little better
Yeah.
based on the teams.
Yep.
But I think that could literally be back to back either or. Flip those.
Indy. Stephon Gilmore's still out there, but it seems as though Indy's going to move on from him.
Yeah.
Perfect replacement. You get your CB1, move on from your previous CB1 who's aging, and you get Quinyon Mitchell, and now you have a go-to lockdown, shutdown corner to build that defense.
And they already have one of the
around.
best slot corners in the game in Kenny Moore. So
Yeah.
their secondary now is looking really dangerous.
Yep.
You pair that with a pretty solid defensive line led by DeForest Buckner. This could be a really, really fun Indy team to watch, especially under A. Rich.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Seattle.
At 16,
So Seattle is my pick here, and
there's a lot to work with. for
quite an
Seattle.
interesting offseason themselves. They traded for Sam Howell, which is quite interesting because do they see Sam Howell as a top-end backup quarterback, or is that their way of saying we're not completely sold on Geno Smith anymore?
This might be the future.
That could be a quite interesting situation to watch, but they, in one way, shape, or form, they have their starter between one of those two, and they lost quite a bit of firepower. They lost their star, Bobby Wagner, again, to free agency. He went to Washington, and they lost Jordan Brooks, and they lost an offensive lineman, former Detroit Lion Evan Brown, and they lost Drew Lock. And so you sit here and they have Mike McDonald now, who's a defensive guy. Seattle's always been a defensive first team, but their offense is recently, the last few years, has kind of led their team. Pete Carroll's now in the front office. So it's an interesting pick here. They have two top flight cornerbacks in Illinois stud corner, Devon Witherspoon, who was a fantastic pick despite Evans' rage with the player last year, and he pairs perfectly with why am I blanking on his name?
Tariq Woolen.
Yeah, Tariq Woolen. Man, that is a fantastic DB room. But
I think the Lions won though. I think we won.
Yeah, the Lions had a great draft. It's hard to argue with that. So you're set on wide receiver. You have DK. You just drafted Jackson Smith and Jigba. You have Tyler Lockett back. So I think that you look at if you're looking at defense, you're looking at one of the edges or the tackles, and on offense, you're looking at offensive line. And if I'm making the pick, I'm probably going to take J.C. Latham here. I think that they could use some offensive line help, and Seattle Seahawks have never had a good offensive line. They always seem to just leave that position group.
Whatever.
Yeah, they just kind of leave
guys together.
They kind of just patch their offensive line together. So you got to get an offensive line group that you can actually rely on, especially if you have a quarterback that you're not extremely confident in. You got to give them time back there to deliver the ball to all these extremely valuable high draft pick weapons that you got. You just drafted Zach Charbonnet. You have Kenneth Walker. You need a line to protect them, right? Mm-hmm. Give him J.C. Latham, who can play inside and outside at guard or tackle, and you just keep going on offense with that. Mike McDonald's probably going to be pushing for defense here, but I think Latham's the best player on the board at this point. You could argue there's some other players that are, but I like J.C. Latham at this pick.
Yeah, I'm a little rattled that he's off the board here because I have Cincinnati's pick, and I think he's definitely a target for them. So good pick. I think you are right in the sentiment that Seattle might be going defense here just because of their brand and their history and who their head coach is now. But that offensive line definitely could use a J.C. Latham. So good work, Tyler.
I was really close to taking Byron Murphy because I think now you're starting to get to the point where he's becoming a value. But I think they could use some offensive line help.
For sure.
And this is such a deep class that you wanna get one of the top guys before they're all gone. So
For sure.
all right, so Justin is the Jaguars here.
Ooh. One of the more interesting off seasons in the
I
NFL.
know.
I feel like we say that about every single team.
There's a lot going on.
They did have an interesting offseason, though.
A wild offseason.
They let Calvin Ridley go, which was quite interesting. And
Replaced him with Gabe Davis.
they replaced him with Gabe Davis. And I like Gabe Davis. I think that he could be more than just a deep threat guy. But
No, I agree because you're throwing him with Christian Kirk,
Yeah.
and then you're also who else is out there?
That's it, really.
No.
In terms of pass.
Zay Jones?
yeah, Zay Jones.
Yeah, they got Zay Jones.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking
he's
about
okay.
out there. And then they got Evan Ingram,
is
yeah.
more
And then
of
you
a-
got ETN, him.
Mhm.
So, I don't know. It's tough looking at this, right? You bring in, you look at the needs, right? You maybe need some offense, but you also look at the edge or DB, You bring in Darnell Savage at the safety position, Eric Armstead, leaves the Niners, and then so that kind of bolsters the defensive line. So it's kind of a tough thing, right? You look at it. Do you want to value and protect Trevor Lawrence right now? Because it seems like guard/center is a value right now. I think I wouldn't be too worried at the DB position. I think you could also look highly at the edge. A sleeper in play here to me right now. You very likely could be Powers Johnson out of Oregon.
Mhm.
Don't sleep on that pick, especially because he could play guard and also center.
Yep.
So that's another factor. I think they do go defense here. I don't know, something about it. I think they should probably protect Lawrence a little more, especially with everything they got going on. Kind of like Seattle, right? How they got everything going on in the offense.
Mhm.
But Jags do have their quarterback, so maybe it is smart to protect him. But to me, I think they go defense. I do think they don't take a defensive back. I think they go, edge. They go some form of lineman. So I think they go edge. And it's tough, right? It's tough between Latu and Verse. Because I think I think Verse is a little more skilled, but Latu has more of a better motor he's continuous.
And with Latu, you have to talk about his injury history. And
Yeah.
he was forced to medically retire from Washington after suffering a serious neck injury in 2020. And then in 2021, he saw a specialist and was medically cleared. And he had an awesome season last year for UCLA with 13 sacks and 10.5 the year before. So he's a really good prospect. If there weren't any injury concerns, most people would have Latu as edge 1 in this class. So
I agree.
There is a risk there, but there's a lot of reward there too.
Yeah, I think there is tremendous upside with him, but I agree. I think the injury history is a factor. So I think they keep the boy home, and I think the Jags take Jared Verse.
Jared Verse, keep him in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not too far, a little west, or a little east. Tallahassee to Jacksonville.
Yeah.
All right. So Verse is off the board. I like that pick.
Could go anyway. You could go protect him.
sure.
You could also go get DeGene or Nate Wiggins if you want a corner.
Funny enough, Brugler compares Verse. His pro comp is a former Jacksonville Jaguar, Dante Fowler Jr. So that's his pro comp.
Interesting.
I do like Verse. He's one of the guys that I wish would fall to the Lions. And I think that's a sweet pairing with Josh Allen. Who they just extended.
They just signed him to a massive deal.
So if you're the Bengals here, I think you just kind of run up to the board and take Byron Murphy the second here. I mean, you kind of replace DJ Reader.
Yep. With a different kind of D tackle, but
definitely a different style of play.
He's not a nose, but
he's not a nose tackle. He's kind of more of the
3-tech.
The 3-tech, but I do think when I look at the Bengals, they are kind of molding themselves into more of a defense-first team, in my opinion. On all likelihood, T. Higgins is going to get traded. And I think they need to kind of protect Joe Burrow a little bit more. And you can protect him by getting a better defense, by building on that defense. And I think you kind of saw that with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs this year, right? This wasn't Mahomes' greatest statistical year, but the team was better defensively, and that helped Mahomes over the course of the season. And I think the same thing will happen in Cincinnati by taking a Byron Murphy and by building on the defense. Lou Anarumo has done a great job over the past couple of years, but you gotta resupply. And a guy like Byron Murphy, who's going to be able to give you that interior pressure and cause havoc, you pair him with Sam Hubbard, who's a very solid edge rusher. I think it makes a ton of sense. So I think this is a total slam dunk for Cincinnati. And in all likelihood, they're going to have a ton of capital because I think T. Higgins gets traded soon enough here.
Interesting. I like that pick.
Yeah.
Especially for the replacement of Reader, which they need
Yeah.
because he's a big, powerful presence, and he's just
Different style
strong.
of play, but
yeah.
I mean, you gotta have somebody on the inside when you lose Reader. I mean, because they have Sheldon Rankins who can kind of be more of like the nose, but this will give you a nice pairing where you're going to be able to create pressure inside and out. So I think it's pretty awesome for Sin City.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
Rams.
I'm up with the Rams, and you could say they've had an interesting offseason.
They've had an interesting offseason.
No, we've just been saying that for everybody. They added Detroit Lion, Jonah Jackson. They added Tre'Davious White, who the Bills let go. They added Darius Williams from the Jaguars, and they scooped up Jimmy G after being released from the Raiders as a backup.
I don't understand. Should have just kept Wentz.
Probably because he's a similar quarterback to Matt Stafford. They're similar in style.
and he's
Obviously,
better than
he's. Yeah, I mean,
Well, when he's
Wentz,
not on roids or broken.
that's true. But the biggest loss out of any team this entire season was the retirement of
Aaron Donald.
first ballot Hall of Famer, arguably the best defensive player all time, and Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
And
It's a heartbreaker.
that's a tough one to swallow because they already lost Ramsey a couple years, last year, and the Rams are slowly falling apart a little bit. And Matthew Stafford's not getting any older, or not getting any younger. He is getting older.
Young boy.
So what I'm looking at here is a couple positions. I'm looking at maybe snagging like an Amarius Mims, who a lot of draft people love because of his massive length with his 36th and an 8th inch arms. All right.
Longfellow.
All right there. Yeah, I mean, tons of length there. You could never have enough length. But I'm also considering Laiatu Latu, who is starting to become a value here because of his talent. But I'm also thinking maybe defensive back. They did get some DBs, which is why I'm leaning away from that position, but Cooper DeJean and Nate Wiggins are two players that a lot of teams like. So my decision is I think I'm going to go with Laiatu Latu here. I just think getting some edge help, replacing a defensive lineman in Aaron Donald. Of course, Latu's not going to be anything close to what Donald was, but he's arguably the most talented edge player in this draft from a pass rush and talent perspective. It's just the injury concerns, which if the medicals check out, this is a value here, and so I think this is a good pick, and this is about the range that you could see Latu starting to go, probably between here and the early 20s. He'd probably go, and you lose one defensive player or a defensive lineman, and you add one here, and this is the first time the Rams have picked in the first round since Jared Goff. So they're not used to being in this spot of getting such a talented player, but
it's crazy it's been that long.
Yeah. But Latu, yep.
Latu. I like that. Keep the young boy in LA, and
For sure.
just let him feel it out. That's the thing. It's like right at this point, it's like at this point the value can oversell the injury.
For sure.
Right.
Troubles. Here's one thing I want to look at real quick. Well, we jump
While
from
you're looking
LA.
the Steelers are now on the clock. Justin has the Steelers. To say they had an interesting offseason would be an understatement. I think they had the loudest offseason potentially. I mean, you add Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, a lot of personality in that quarterback room. And then on defense, Dante Jackson and Patrick Queen. I mean, two guys that are going to start for them. And now there's rumblings that they might be looking into Brandon Ayuk as a potential trade candidate. That's been surfacing on the Twitter sphere. So, I mean, they are being aggressive. They have not shied away from the fact that they need to improve this offense, and especially the QB position. And I think they've done that with Russ and Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields will be the starter at some point this year, if not day one. I believe in what he's capable of doing, and I think it's a good fit with Mike Tomlin, and I think that's the most important thing. He could have gone to a lot of bad situations, but I think he landed in a really good one under a really good coach. So that's why I'm more confident now than I was beforehand, because him in Pittsburgh, I think it's gonna work.
Yeah, Pittsburgh's interesting here because like they need QB. Why is that there? Completely irrelevant.
Yeah, I mean, probably because they don't have like a definite top, quarterback.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't agree with Evan about the Justin Fields thing, but in one way, shape, or form, they have a starting quarterback.
Fields is a polarizing topic for sure.
Yeah, they have a starting quarterback, that's for sure. But definitely need to be upgrading the offense. I think, if I'm looking at this pick, I'm definitely looking towards Brian Thomas. I'm looking in that direction. In offensive line could be an option. They could upgrade the defense. So
I would give up this pick for Ayuk. I would.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing, right? You obviously don't think of receiver if you're going to go for Ayuk, right? Because you're going to trade that pick. But also, if you're not thinking about Ayuk, do you want to go get a Brian Thomas to pair with
George Pickens?
George Pickens, because all you did, I mean, you signed other receivers, but not of value, right? Marquez Callaway is going to be okay. Van Jefferson's going to be okay, but there's no one who's like, to me, a legit two. Those are like three. You're a receiver three guys.
Wide receiver 3-4s.
Yeah. So, absolutely, you could take Brian Thomas Jr. I think that would be the smart pick in this situation, right? Because if you don't go after Ayuk, that's a smart pick. I also don't think they go defense. I think, to me, if you don't go wide receiver, you go Amarius Mims or Powers Jackson. Because you could take that center or you take the tackle with the massive length.
Evan loves length, so.
So this is tough
great.
because I think... Because it's like, do they take? Because if they trade that pick, then it wouldn't matter for these guys. I think they don't. I don't think they worry. I feel like Pittsburgh doesn't worry so much about their offensive line. I think they should, but maybe they don't.
They're another team like
Seattle,
where they just kind of
exactly.
They drafted Broderick Jones last year.
Yeah,
true.
So it's like maybe they don't care right now about
they might
their
not
line.
double up back-to-back
Exactly.
years
That's what I'm
with
thinking.
a Georgia tackle.
So I will. I think I'm going to challenge outside the box, and I'm going to have them not worry about Ayuk. They're locked into the pick, so they take the smart thing in Brian Thomas.
Okay.
All right.
I will just say about Brian Thomas, I think this could be
a great underrated pick.
I think this could be the steal of round one is Brian Thomas. I think people are really underrating him as a prospect. He ran a 4.33 40-yard dash. He's got the ideal size that you're looking for. You love the length and you love the size. I mean, that's what I'm looking for. He's got a great RAS score, so he's athletic. But I think Brian Thomas is a great player. Let me pull up a couple of his numbers here.
Well, while you're looking up those numbers, I just want to say
6'3",
my only concern with Brian Thomas here is very similar player to George Pickens in terms of prototype build.
Do you think
Do I
him
think-
and Ayuk are
do I-
similar? Pickens and Ayuk?
No, Ayuk is a surgical route runner.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
Ayuk is
Yeah,
Ayuk is totally different.
I was going to say Brugler does say that the route running needs to be fixed. There needs some improvement, and you could say the same thing about Pickens. I'll read you his summary of Brian Thomas. He says overall Thomas plays with impressive length, fluid speed, and ball-winning athleticism. If his route running efficiency catches up with him and his natural talent, he'll be a dangerous weapon in the NFL. Projects as a quality starter with the upside of a T. Higgins. So he is a similar prototype to Pickens, I will admit, but Brian Thomas is the clear-cut wide receiver 4 in this class. He's in a tier of his own as far it is. Harrison and Neighbors are in tier 1. Dunze is in his own tier in tier 2. Brian Thomas is his own tier in tier 3. And so I think that the value here is too good that you don't really play the game of prototypes of receivers. You just take you can coach route running. You know, just like the Lions are doing with JMO. You can coach the route running. Sure. He's got the speed, he's got the length, he's got everything he's got the size, he's got everything you're looking for in a prototype wide receiver. So
yeah, I mean,
I think it's a great pick.
Are going to make him feel you, right? I mean, they're
we're going off the rails.
With that size, you're going to feel them, and
you're going to feel their presence.
You're going to feel them hard.
They're going to get all up on the defensive backs, that's for sure. No, but I like the pick, and if you're gonna have a patch quarterback room with Wilson and Fields, you need offensive weapons. And when you got rid of Deontay Johnson, you gave up a weapon there. So I think Brian Thomas is a good pick.
Yeah, I agree.
And this is too much of a value at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think Brian Thomas is super talented. It's just, how does it work in Pittsburgh? Not that you can't have two guys that are both the same style of receiver.
Both have a lot of length and a lot of size.
They do. It's just, Pittsburgh is kind of known to have that kind of axe receiver. Mm-hmm. Why not have two, essentially, is kind of what you're thinking. So now we're on to Miami, who had a ton of roster turnover. I mean, a ton.
Yeah.
You lose Christian Wilkins, Xavier Howard, you let go. Van Ginkel, Luke Van Ginkel, underrated player for them last year. He heads off to Minnesota now.
Yeah.
He was sensational for them last year.
A lot of Lions fans wanted him.
He's really good. Kind of an Anzalone, but better.
He can cover and he can blitz. Like he's a do-it-all linebacker.
Yeah, and they look the
exact. It's a great pickup for Minnesota.
And then Robert Hunt, another big one. He got a massive deal. I'm blanking on where he is now at, though.
It's okay. I'll look it up real quick.
I think it's Carolina.
Carolina
gave
that's where he went. Yeah.
A 5-year, $100 million deal for Robert Hunt, getting $20 million a year. It's crazy for a guard.
Yep.
So Miami lost a ton of guys. They did add some players that are going to help them out for sure. Kendall Fuller, Shaq Barrett, sure. But I mean, to me, they got worse. And that big, I think, red flag is probably that guard position. I think they're looking at Robert Hunt as a big loss, and I think they're going to attack guard. And at this point in the draft, the 20s are where you're going to see more guards go, like more pure guards, I would say. And I think they get one of the most impressive and athletic guards in the draft, and one of the most athletic players in the draft in Graham Barton out of Duke. This is a guy that I think Brad Holmes in Detroit would love to have. A freaky, versatile, athletic guard/center. He can do it all.
For someone who loves the RAS score, 999. Yes. How about that for a RAS score for an offensive lineman? That's a near perfect score as far as athleticism. Yeah.
So I just think he slides in, takes over Hunt's spot, and you can move him around too if you need to. And he's a freaky athlete. And I think the one thing that Miami did really good last year was protecting Tua, right? And if Tua's healthy for 17 games, they have a shot to win the AFC East. They have a shot to contend the postseason. And they got to continue to do that because without Tua, this team's record goes down the drain. So I think they just reinvest in that O-line and kind of bank on the offense being what it was last year again, and even better.
Yeah, Barton and Jackson Powers Johnson are right there for the best guard center in the draft, but I don't disagree that Barton would be a great pick here. And now on to Philadelphia with my pick.
I'm intrigued by this pick.
So Philadelphia, they added Saquon Barkley. They were aggressive this offseason. No one added more perennial players than maybe Minnesota, than the Philadelphia Eagles here. They added Saquon. They added Bryce Huff. They got back C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
Devin White.
But they did lose some players. Yeah, they got Devin White as well. They lost Jason Kelsey to retirement. They traded Hassan Reddick, Fletcher Cox to retirement, and they let DeAndre Swift go, amongst others. So Philly's really trying to climb back to the top of the mountain here, because you're starting to feel like Philadelphia is slipping in the NFC ladder. You're starting to think that the Niners are at the top, and then Philly was kind of right there with them, and now they're kind of slipping into the tier with Detroit and with these other teams. But you add someone like Saquon, and that'll be really interesting to see with Jalen Hurts. I'll have a hard. Any team trying to stop the run against them will have a very hard time. But
sure.
As far as their draft, you lose a Jason Kelsey. Do you want to replace him with a Jackson Powers Johnson?
Mm-hmm.
I think on the offensive side, it would pretty much be offensive line. Or on the defensive side, we haven't really touched corner yet too much. It's only 2 corners off the board, and this is a draft with some really good corners. And they still have Slay. Do they still have
Bradbury?
Yes, Bradbury.
Yeah. But
It's an old room.
They need to get,
room.
it's an old room, and they need to get younger. So we are going to go defensive back. And I think the perfect player for this system would be Cooper DeJean. You could play him at safety if need be. You could play him next to C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Because C.J. is also a versatile player. You could move him to nickelback. You could play him at either safety spot. He could play strong or free safety, just like the Lions used him at all 3 spots. He's a chess piece. So Philly takes another chess piece in Cooper DeJean, who can play on the inside, on the outside, and at safety. And you just play your best defensive backs on the field. And then inevitably, once Bradbury or Slay walks, you have your contingency plan in Cooper DeJean. And I think that's a great pick for him.
It's a
if he's still
fascinating
there.
selection. I like it a lot. I do like the versatility that DeJean brings. It's so anti-Philly to go with like a Cooper DeJean kind of guy.
Right, they always draft
attack
trenches.
SEC, SEC trench guys.
Yeah.
Seems like
so for
with
them
that
to
where
go-
Kool-Aid would come in, or
Right.
maybe a Wiggins.
Yeah, just something like to me, it always seems like Georgia or Bama, like attacking the SEC, attacking the trenches. So for them to go outside
Right.
here or kind of just in the back end would be kind of anti-Philly. But I do like Cooper DeJean. I think he's a really, really solid player, and he's super athletic too. Posted one of the better RAS scores of the top cornerbacks in the draft. So I think it's an interesting selection. If you're a Philly fan, you're like, this is kind of anti what we do, but I think it works.
Athletic and versatile, can't complain.
Yeah. And I picked around Nate Wiggins because Nate Wiggins has the talent, and we'll talk about him, if he ends up getting selected here. But he's an interesting player that doesn't fit with every single scheme. So, but Cooper DeJean is so versatile that's where his value is he can do so much. So
Absolutely.
For sure.
I got nothing right now in my mind for this pick because
Back on the clock with
it's
the
more
Vikings.
than back on the clock with the Vikings. More than likely, it's going to be gone. I'm not worried about QB. I'm not worried about tight end. I mean, I could go. I could risk a corner here, but I feel like it's got to be a line, right? And I mean, this is definitely one of the places where you could have, again, Powers Johnson going.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, to me, in my mental state of looking at the grand scheme of things, obviously there's a lot of talk of him going and the next pick after this potentially, because just how Dallas is, but
there's Johnny Newton there.
I know.
There is defensive back if you wanted to go McKinstry or Wiggins.
Chop Robinson.
Chop Robinson's there. There's some
I forgot
valuable,
about Chop.
There is some value there. Amarius Mims if you want to go tackle.
I know. I was thinking that. So I think I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna play a simple game because this pick's probably gonna be gone. So I'm gonna go Amarius Mims here.
Okay.
Interesting. Not in a bad way, because I think
it's just a simple pick to take here, and not because we know it's
sure.
not going to be there.
I think Minnesota has a good offensive line. Yeah, I think it's a little underrated, but I think it's solid enough where
it protects.
Like they might not need to press the issue. Is kind of just what I'm saying. But if they like Mims enough, and I mean if he's the best player available on the board. They have that luxury as well.
It doesn't matter because he's not going to be there because they're not going to be there.
Probably not, right? And you might be kind of thinking...
Yeah, I mean, they do have Christian Darrisaw, who's a great tackle in this league. You could play Mims at right tackle. They do have Dalton Reisner, Garrett Bradbury. They traded away Ezra Cleveland, so, they have a hole there on the inside. But you can never have enough offensive line. I mean, look in Detroit, right?
Yeah.
So
can't go wrong.
I think you could play. No, you did. Play Mims. You play Mims at right tackle. You already have your left tackle and Darrisaw, and you got your bookend tackles for whenever you do get your franchise quarterback. And this pick could be Bo Nix here, or it could be Penix here. This is the range where you start. This would be the pick where you start to see teams flirt with the idea, because early second is kind of like their range, but teams always like to creep into the.
Think about that. I should have just went like.
Teams like to creep into the end of the first and get the fifth-year option. So this could be quarterback here, but
I know they need a quarterback, so I should have played it like that. That's not me.
It's all right.
No,
Mims is a good player, so there's nothing wrong with that pick whatsoever. All right, Evan. So Dallas
is on the board here.
And have they had an interesting offseason?
No.
They have not.
The quietest offseason.
Maybe how interesting on how boring
Dallas.
It's been.
It's
and how Jerry Jones went into the offseason saying they were gonna
Take
be
over.
tong to
Look
win.
How many needs they need.
They were gonna be trying to win, and it's been crickets in Dallas. I mean, they almost acquired They stole Eric Kendricks away from San Francisco, and other than that, they've done pretty much nothing, and they've let a bunch of guys walk out the door.
And that's where I get a little confused with the direction they're going in, because if they were really trying to win now, if they were really trying to compete, they would have made an acquisition. They would have cleared the books in some way, shape, or form and gotten a free agent. But they did nothing. And there's been whispers that they might not extend Dak past this season. And while I think they ultimately do, I'm gonna do it here. I'm gonna pull the trigger on a QB. I'm not saying Dallas makes this pick, but I think this is where you see. I think this is where you see Bo Nix go.
Interesting.
Even after the acquisition of Trey Lance.
Even after the acquisition of Trey Lance, I'm not saying Dallas is the team to select Bo Nix, but I think it's on the table. I think they are serious about the direction that they're going in by not making any moves, by staying silent. I think they are kind of in limbo with Dak. Like this could be it. You have 1 year left on your deal, and it would not shock me if they went QB here. In a similar fashion that Green Bay went QB with Jordan Love.
Have it in your pocket, ready to
exactly. And Bo Nix a little bit older, and he would be able to play right away. But to me, I just think Dak's time in Dallas might be coming to a conclusion, and I'm just kind of bracing for that with this selection of Bo Nix. Ultimately, I think they go offensive line. I think they stay the course. But I kind of did it last year with Hooker in Minnesota. I'm going to do it again this year with Bo Nix in Dallas.
I hate this pick. This makes no sense to me. This is my
I'm
first.
fine with it. I think it's great.
This is my first pick.
Rick's in a little rumble.
This is my first pick that I'm going to flame. This makes no sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
This makes
But
no sense.
It could in, this time next year.
Your justification makes no sense to me. This is my. I'm just being honest. I'm just being honest.
If they don't believe in Lance, why not go rip it
I'm just
down?
being honest. Okay, they traded a middle round pick for Trey Lance, so that is their contingency plan for if Dak doesn't re-sign. But they're not rebuilding. They're trying to win.
Are they trying to win with Eric Kendricks?
Their moves,
is your
yeah.
only move?
Okay, no. Okay,
And losing everyone else.
I can't defend their offseason, and I will not. Okay, their offseason has been bad. But I don't think this offseason says that they're scrapping and they're starting over. They're going to re-sign Dak. Dak isn't going anywhere. So this pick makes no sense to me. I mean, this is a waste of a pick. If I was them, I'd be taking Jackson. If this is the situation, you take Jackson Powers Johnson and you just continue to retool and you move forward. I mean, Bo Nix makes no sense here. I don't get it. I mean, they traded for Trey Lance. That was their contingency plan. So, I mean, we can move on, but
I'm just saying
this pick makes no sense to me whatsoever. And
I think teams like Dallas, by saying we're doing nothing this offseason, are signaling a sign of things to come in terms of change.
And that's what they did with their acquisition of Trey Lance, because they wouldn't have traded.
Is not like
I don't
special.
agree. No, I agree. I don't agree that Trey Lance is some special prospect. But what did they trade? A 4th round pick for him? I mean, what was it? A 4th or a?
I think it was a 4th or a 5th. Nothing.
Let's look real quick.
Nothing that would prevent you from drafting a Bo Nix if you like him.
4th round pick. No, I mean a 4th round pick. That's good capital. I mean, we don't think 4th round pick is high capital. I mean, we don't have to hang on this pick for too long. But this pick makes no sense to me. You trade a 4th round pick for Trey Lance not to be your 3rd string quarterback.
No, and look,
it doesn't make any sense.
I'm not saying it makes a ton of sense, but when I look at what they've done, and when I look at Dak and Dallas not really having a ton of conversations as in terms of an extension. To me, I don't think Trey Lance is like the guy.
I don't think so either. But they
might be looking at a Bo Nix or a Penix here and saying, if we like this guy enough and we don't believe in Dak long term, if we don't want to sign him long term to a deal where we're going to pay him $50+ million a year, we might go with the rookie QB. We might.
We can move.
What's happening?
I think it's on the table.
I don't think it's anywhere in the realm of on the table.
I think
because if they really don't believe in Dak, they would turn to the quarterback they just spent a 4th round pick.
I think it's on the table, but it's like at the other end of the table.
I think it's on like
it's the salt
the
shaker
other side
that's
of
on
the
the other
globe.
side.
Pass it over here.
Yeah.
Hear me down there? All right, Packers on the clock.
All right, so I'm up here after that head scratching pick. So
You're welcome.
the Packers made a couple of pretty big moves. They let go of Aaron Jones and said, we're going to go and get the best running back on the market, and Josh Jacobs. I mean, you could argue Derrick Henry, but
Saquon at the time.
Oh, Saquon, you're right. But they went and got a top-flight running back in Josh Jacobs, and they cut Aaron Jones, which is awfully interesting to me. Wasn't it that Aaron Jones is a free agent? They just decided to replace him. But I love the acquisition of Xavier McKinney. I think he is probably, at his age, I think he's, 24, 25?
He's
and
young.
they got him on. I don't know why the Giants let him walk. He's one of the best young safeties in the league. I mean, Packers fans were salty that the Packers traded away their 2nd round pick last year so that the Lions could go and get Brian Branch. And I think this free agent pickup more than makes up for it. I love Xavier McKinney, but so they had a pretty good off season, and
you replace both your running back and your safety.
They're gunning for Detroit in the North, and I think Detroit really has to play their A game because this is going to be a tough division. But looking at as far as their options, I mean, what do you think? You think quarterback here or?
Maybe.
No. Wide receiver
Michael
is not
Penix,
on the
come
table. You're not going wide receiver.
No.
You could go offensive line. I think that's very well in play. But I'm gonna do. I think I'm gonna do something a little little interesting. What I'm going to do is there is a lot of rumblings in Green Bay about the status of
Jeez.
why am I forgetting his name? The corner.
Oh, Jair Alexander.
Jair Alexander and his status in Green Bay going forward. And there was rumblings that Green Bay wanted to get rid of him because he's just been a locker room disruption. And I think they've since then sort of mended things, but it's not looking like Jair's future is going to be in Green Bay for his career. So I say this to say I think they go ahead and they take Nate Wiggins here.
All right.
So Nate Wiggins is an interesting prospect. He's not my cup of tea at corner, but I can understand the appeal. He ran a 4.28 40. He has speed to burn, and but
especially running on ice.
But what's his problem? His problem is he plays at our weight. He weighed in at the combine at 173 pounds. That is like
I went more than
15 pounds lighter than what he should be at, even on a low end.
At 6'1",
right?
Yeah.
He needs 10, 15 more pounds in order to be playing at any sort of NFL weight, or else he's going to get thrown around out there. With that weight, you can't play the run game. I mean, you're there and you're just essentially a ball hawking corner. I mean, and that's what you're getting with him. And you look at the corner that Washington drafted last year. What was his name?
Emmanuel Forbes.
Emmanuel Forbes, and it was the same thing. He's a ball hawk who's small and light, and that he has to play in a specific kind of scheme. And so,
but you saw Forbes struggle early in the season.
Yeah,
and just getting used to the size and the weight.
But Nate Wiggins has ball production, so he gets the ball. He gets a lot of balls in his hands. That's one thing for sure. So and
it's like you're trying to make a joke.
You side-eyed. You gave him the side eye.
I'm just keeping a straight face.
So anyway,
here.
he has 3 career interceptions, which isn't a ton, but he gets a lot of PBUs. And
a straight face.
27 for his career. So he gets a lot of hands on the ball. So anyway, I think that's the pick there.
I don't mind.
I think this is about the range. This is his floor. I don't think Nate Wiggins really gets past the mid-20s.
Could go higher.
You could see him as high as the teens. It's just depending on the flavor of what you're looking for in your corner. But
absolutely.
But for the sake of Jair and his status in Green Bay, I think Nate Wiggins makes sense.
Absolutely. On to Tampa. Tampa is, it's interesting going forward, right? They win that division. They win a playoff game at home against Philly. They lose by an ending interception against Detroit.
Yeah.
But they lose a lot of guys, You lose some great pieces with Shaq Barrett, Devin White going, Carlton Davis now, and then goes to the Lions.
You did extend Baker and you did extend Mike Evans.
Exactly.
Though,
so you have your offensive pieces. So you kind of want to, it's obviously there's some back end stuff that you may want to look into. But to me, start at the forefront, protect and lock in with Baker, as Ryan Jensen just retired, the center of the Buccaneers. And I think you just go with a smart pick and you take, since he's here, Jackson Powers-Johnson at the center.
And I know you've been waiting to take him with somebody.
No.
Because he's a good player.
Because I got the Lions pick, so I could.
I know JPJ is a fan favorite here in Detroit. And there's not a lot of my guys for Detroit in this draft because they pick so late that there's no Devon Witherspoon, there's no, top flight guy. But if there was one, Jackson Powers-Johnson is the guy that would be my dream scenario for Detroit at 29, and he's a great player. He could play guard. He could play guard at an elite level, and he could play center at an elite level.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, he won the award for the best interior offensive lineman. Yeah, the Remington Award for the top center in all of college football. He won that last year. So a really good pick here, and I think Tampa would be very pleased with that.
Absolutely. I think in this from 21 down, I think you got depending on who potentially could come in at 23, that's a dicey thing. So add them maybe. But Dolphins, Cowboys, and Bucks would probably be the biggest threats to taking him from the Lions. Maybe Cardinals. I don't know how much they're going on with their line. I know they got Paris Johnson last year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess we can see what's happening going forward. But I think it's the solid pick for now because there's a lot going on there, right? They could use they needed another tight end, could use some running back depth. Trey Benson definitely could be an option for them, but maybe not at this pick. But we'll see what happens going forward. But on to Arizona.
Yeah, I think Arizona would love Jackson Powers Johnson, like a lot of other teams would. Just his versatility and his talent alone certainly makes him
for
worthy.
that center guard, especially if they already got Marvin. That's like
it makes sense.
That's like a beautiful draft for them. They could just need defense after that.
It makes sense for sure. But Arizona needs a pass rusher. They need a guy to get after the quarterback, and I think their defense was solid last year, but they still need a guy, in my opinion, that can really be that speed rusher that can get after the quarterback, that has those raw tools. And to me, that's Chop Robinson. This is a guy that is a bit raw, needs a ton of polishing. But Jonathan Gannon, after going offense with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Masi Ansenfort, right? He's the GM there. They went offense last year. They go offense first this year. I think now they say, okay, let's get a guy on our defense that's going to be able to get after the QB. And Chop, one of the best at doing that. A bit inconsistent, and he does have the one-trick pony allegations against him right now. Basically, all he can do is speed rush. But if he can develop, work on his size, work on his moves and his skill set, this could be a really dangerous player. I like the fit in Arizona too. They need somebody on that defensive line, and I think Chop is the guy.
Absolutely, I don't disagree with that. Yeah, and there's a lot of upside to him if he can really break it down and become diverse.
If he puts it all together, he could be the best defensive player in the class. But he's so raw though that he could bust out. So he's definitely that prototypical saying a boom bust player, but he is, and but he's got a ton of talent.
And at this spot in the first round too, I think you can afford that risk a little bit, like shooting for upside a little bit more.
Shooting for like a top 10 player in the draft.
You already got
27.
Marv.
You already got like a safe floor guy with Marvin. You know what he's going to, you know what he's going to be. You know what he's going to bring. Yep. Chop is all right. Let's gamble a little bit and see if we can land, a diamond in the back end of the first round rough.
Absolutely. Bills on the clock.
And the Bills.
A lot going on with them.
What are they doing? Are they rebuilding? Or
they're not rebuilding, but they had to reshuffle the deck because kind of like Miami, just contracts were due. Right?
Yeah, and guys went on their way.
Rent was due.
They traded Steph Diggs with 4 years left on 4 years left on his deal, and that was. I don't know if I'd be doing that. I know that he had a down year, but he's a talented player. I think he's gonna really thrive in Houston. But I understand there was some off the field locker concerns.
Might have been a little
rotten there. But they left. They moved on from Steph Diggs. Gabe Davis is in Jacksonville now. Trey White is in LA, like we talked about. Poyer, Hyde, they're gone. So they got some work to do.
And they're not in a beneficial position.
Wide receiver makes a ton of sense here. Defense, they could use some defense. Kool-Aid would make some sense as well. I'm sure, that's an option for Detroit at 29, and this would probably sting if he went here. But I'm going to stick on the offensive side because you cannot leave Josh Allen hanging.
You cannot.
Who's their wide receiver one right now? I don't even know.
Khalil Shakir?
That's pathetic.
To me, it's Dalton Kincaid, honestly.
Yeah,
it's now the Patrick Mahomes vibe.
But that's pathetic. And you're doing him a disservice. You're not setting Josh Allen up to succeed, and he's your team. So
you're also hurting you're also hurting the tight end because
Yeah.
he was being able to be open and he was
Yeah.
making so much advantage.
Yeah, Kincaid. Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh.
So we're gonna
Toss.
add Adonai Mitchell here. That's who we're picking up from Texas.
I feel like you were going with him there, and I love the pick.
I like it too.
I mean, he once again, if we're talking Raz score, look no further than a
Love that Raz.
999 Raz score for Adonai Mitchell. So he's got ideal speed, 4.34 40-yard dash. I mean, and he plays at a good weight. You know, Xavier Worthy, who is a candidate to go in the first round, who set the all-time 40-yard dash record, but he plays at, or he came to the combine at 165. I mean, that's not a play weight. I mean, Adonai Mitchell ran a tenth of a second longer and weighs 40 pounds more than him. So he has true game-breaking speed, and I'm sure Josh Allen, who had Gabe Davis, you know, and knows what it's like to, you know, who's got the biggest arm in the league, love to be able to just have Adonai Mitchell just break free, you know, with, you know, going deep and he can hit him. So
and have a guy he can build with compared to Diggs coming in with like an ego like on that.
Yeah, you can bring in Adonai Mitchell. You can you know, he'll be in a room full of vets, you know, and Josh Allen will be there to build chemistry with him. You know, Adonai Mitchell didn't have the most production at Texas, only 800 receiving yards last year, and only totaled 1,400 for his career. So, you know, the production wasn't there, but man, he got in the end zone, 11 touchdowns last year. So hopefully he can do that for Buffalo, and I think Josh Allen would be very happy.
His catch radius is also crazy.
Yeah, he's an athlete. Yeah. I mean, what was his vertical? I mean, he jumped a 36-inch vert. I mean, that's average, but no, I mean,
just like his ability, his ball awareness is insane. If you watch him against that Bama game earlier in the year, his ball awareness is huge.
Yeah, 39.5. No, you're right. Nope. But 11, that's better. Yeah.
But almost, and if you look at it, almost an 11.5-inch broad jump. I mean, he is a freak athlete, and that's just based off of, you know, the combine. You look at the tape and the production, 11 touchdowns. Obviously, you got to have the size and the catch radius and the ball skills to do that, and he has it. And I think that's what Josh Allen's been missing too. It's been a while since we've seen that kind of receiver in Buffalo. Steph Diggs, more of the crafty route runner, get in between the numbers. Adonai is going to play outside the numbers and really open up the offense for Buffalo, and then Kincaid can be the guy on the inside and run in the middle of the field. So I think it'll work out well if Mitchell falls, like I think he will, and I think it's a perfect spot. Now Justin gets the boys, the Detroit Lions, on the clock here at 29.
The boys are buzzing. Let me just state this first: if Powers Johnson's there, the logic of Brad Holmes is, I will sprint there myself because it's in Detroit this year. So he'd run from Allen Park to downtown just to get that ticket in. But he is not there. So a lot going on, right? You look, because originally you could look at Powers Johnson if he's there because of the injuries. You know, as Frank Ragnow is getting older, you know, he was debating coming back or not next year. He is coming back, and also, you know, along the line, you know, it helps depth, right? Because Eric Decker, we don't know where he's going to be going in the future, you know, as he's getting older. But the key of the off seasons for us, right? The big thing Detroit fans were looking at more than anything was edge and corner, because we really need someone along Hutch. That would be helpful. I think, you know, with bringing in DJ Reader and having him alongside Ali McNeil, that's a more reckless group that can help with Hutch. Obviously, you can kind of find maybe your edge later on or up and down. You do bring in Amik Robertson, right, and then Carlton Davis in the offs, you know, so far in this offseason. So you bring that depth. I think you guys are gonna. You guys probably already know where I'm going with this. You got to go with Kool-Aid McKinstry. I think just you don't like Kool-Aid. You don't Kool-Aid.
I just don't think it's a Brad Holmes player.
I don't think so. Maybe he's not. Yeah, hate on me.
Yeah. I want to push back a little. I don't think Kool-Aid is a Brad Holmes kind of player.
Maybe he's not.
I'm saying he's not. I'm saying.
You're wrong.
Shut up!
You're wrong,
You're
Justin.
wrong.
There's no debate.
It's your
You
pick.
are wrong.
So like,
You can't. You know I'm not gonna get kicked compared to the Bo Nix pick, brother.
Yeah. You have the
That's
worst
fine.
pick of the mock
that's fine.
by a
I
mile,
want the worst
so.
pick of the draft.
You're gonna make your statements. Go ahead, because I know this is a big pick for all of us, right? In general, so
I'm not
Make your
against. I'm not
statements.
against Kool-Aid as the pick. Let me make that clear. I'm saying I don't see him as a Brad Holmes kind of player. I just don't think it fits what we've seen in what he's profiled as a DB. I think he appreciates versatility. I think he likes guys that are athletic, and I think he's looking for more traits than the ones that Kool-Aid possesses. Like I think
you each
look at
also can make a you don't have to go in depth, but you each can make a statement of who you would have taken at this point too.
Like I
It's the
think,
Lions pick.
and I know top 5 player, but like Witherspoon had the traits that
Wait a minute.
I would have taken Witherspoon. But when you look at like traits wise, like that dog mentality, like you were saying last year, yeah, I think he brings that. I think a Quinion Mitchell brings that dog. I think a Terry Arnold brings that dog. I didn't really see that in Kool-Aid when I watched Alabama games. And so that's why I think like when you look at the tape, it's like, okay, I think he's got a cool name. I think he's got a great.
What is that analysis?
He's gonna sell shirts.
I think he's got a cool name. He's gonna sell a little bit, right? But
the guy who chugs the blue Kool-Aid on the streets all the time.
But I think overall, like, I think there's just a bit more like name recognition with Kool-Aid McKinstry, and less. It's more flash than substance, really. To me, I think the pick here would have been potentially. I like this guy, Marshawn Nealon from Western Michigan. I think this guy, sleep on him a little bit.
Where is he?
From Western, he's an edge.
He's an edge.
Oh,
He's an edge rusher from Western. I think, obviously homegrown here, but there's no long-term real solution at that edge. I think James Houston is a specialty edge rusher, and I think Davenport here is kind of just a one-year fix-it solution, right? Like a Band-Aid on maybe a decent-sized hole. They still don't have a running mate with Aiden Hutchinson, and I think that will unlock Aiden Hutchinson to his full potential. If it's Nealand, I think Brad Holmes runs to the table. If there's an edge rusher that Brad Holmes likes, I think they go defensive line, because what we have seen from Brad is BPA. And if they have a defensive edge rusher as the BPA, I think they go that route. And I'm no longer married to the idea of an offensive lineman or a corner. I think he'll go with the best player available.
And yeah, I agree he will.
And I think, like, at this spot, I like Nealand. I do.
Homegrown guy that gets the Detroit vibe.
So I'll tell you. I'll give you the rundown here. I feel like I'm pretty tapped in with the Lions. So I'll give you the full analysis. I agree. I don't think Kool-Aid is a Brad Holmes guy. I don't think he would be chomping at the bit for Kool-Aid. If Kool-Aid falls because of his foot injury if he falls to the
second round,
mid-second round, you could maybe see Brad Holmes maybe consider jumping up and just grabbing a value, which could happen. But I'll tell you, I don't think McKinstry is the pick here. I'll tell you, if this was the situation that played out, I think Brad Holmes is watching his phone, hoping that it rings.
I agree.
And he's taking a trade out. However, there's one player on the board that stands out to me, that if the phone doesn't does not ring or does not get an offer that he's looking for, there's one guy that stands out to me, and he's right there at the top of the board, Johnny Newton, and I think that he would be the pick.
Yeah,
there's a lot of guys around Detroit media who are tapped into the Lions, who actually know what they're talking about, who think Newton is their ideal pick for Detroit. And Newton is no slouch. He is a great prospect. So the only reason I think Brad Holmes would be willing to hear out trade offers here is because he just signed what's his name? Reeder. Yeah, he just signed Reeder, but this is why I think that he'd take him, is because, why am I blanking on everyone's names? The other defensive tackle.
Aleem McNeil.
Aleem McNeil
And Broderick
is
Martin.
in a contract year. And what does Brad Holmes do? He does not. Brad Holmes. They do. Yeah, they're one step ahead, and they do not let their emotions decide their offseason. They did not let. They did not let their emotions decide keeping Jamal Williams
or Josh Reynolds.
keeping Josh Reynolds. They have a value and they stick to it. So if this is the situation that plays out, they look at the phone, and if there's not an option there, they'll take Johnny Newton happily, and they'll be celebrating, and then they will essentially go to Aleem McNeil and say, good luck elsewhere, you're playing on your contract year. If Johnny Newton turns out the way we expect,
Crazy.
I mean, they would not say
Could you imagine?
this would be the talks behind closed doors is if Johnny Newton becomes what we think he's becoming, Aleem McNeil is all of a sudden expendable. Or they extend Aleem McNeil, and now DJ Reeder is
gonna walk after 2
off
years.
the bench and is playing is a bench, at this point because he's on a 2-year deal, and not like he's probably not getting an extension.
He's just a good veteran to guide at that point.
So Newton's a great player. He could play. He does a little bit of everything. He's a little smaller for a defensive tackle, but great player. So anyway, as far as the players on the board there, he's standing out like a sore thumb.
Because he's at that rank
I think
8.
Zach Frazier would make some sense, but I just don't see them loving Kool-Aid McKinstry. I just don't see them getting excited about him. So that's my my analysis. I think Newton would be the one player sticking out like a sore thumb here, and them having him ranked as 8. Brugler here has Newton ranked as the 28th player in this class, and
Get him at
29, that's a pretty good value. So. I could also see, they've been doing their homework on wide receivers and corners in this class. I have zero doubt that they will take a receiver and a corner in this class, and they might move. I'll say, since we're on the Lions right now, how are we doing on time? We doing all right?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. I'll say as far as the Lions, Brad Holmes will never reach on a player, ever. He will not take a corner just because he feels like he needs one. He will not take a receiver just because he feels like he needs one.
In the first round or
in anywhere. But what he will do,
Broderick was a bit of a reach.
No, not to them. To them, he was a value.
Sure, but still, I think for the most part.
You want to talk
yes.
about length?
Well,
that guy's arms are
Let's talk about girth.
generational. That guy has generational length. You will not find that size in any class. They found him as a value.
I think he'll be good.
So anyway, but I will say, as far as needs, what Brad Holmes does to address needs is he moves around the board. So he's not going to sit at 29 and he's not going to say, we need a corner, so I'm taking a corner. What he's going to do is he's going to say, either I like a corner earlier, so he's going to move up and get one, or he'll be like, well, we need a corner and there's not really one here and there's no one else that really excites us. We'll move back to the range where we find that Kool-Aid's going to be in, right?
I think the highest percent chances they would trade out of that pick.
Yeah, if this is the situation, they're taking Johnny Newton or they're trading back. That would be my synopsis. But overall, McKinstry's a good player. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I know Justin's a big fan of McKinstry, so.
Yeah, Kool-Aid would absolutely sell. I'm just
I don't even think about a sell.
you got it. It's a business.
It is, but
You
I agree. He is not 100% a Dan or like their kind of guy.
It's not even that I dislike Kool-Aid. I just I genuinely
I don't
see
dislike
Brad
him either.
Holmes being like that's a
Right.
lion.
I think they like Arnold. I think Arnold is far and away their number one corner in the draft. I don't even think Mitchell is as high as Arnold. I think they already had Arnold in for
They probably
a visit a couple days ago.
Brian Branch what he thought.
I think Arnold is their clear-cut cornerback one, and I think he'd be the only corner that they'd move up for.
I think so too. And
Maybe
they might.
Maybe they might like Cooper DeJean as well, but I don't think that they get as excited to move up 20 spots for him. I think if maybe they move up a spot or two if they are really feeling like he's a value.
Well, if Cooper fell to them somehow, I think he is more likely a lion than Kool-Aid would be.
Yep.
All right, we got the Ravens now on the clock. This is a team
that had an interesting offseason.
Not even that. They just continue to disappoint year in year out in the postseason. And it's just the Lamar Jackson effect. I've never been a fan of his, and it just plays out, every single year in the postseason. They had no shot against Kansas City, and now they find themselves at 30 with a draft pick here that is rather important. I mean, their only addition was Derrick Henry, and they lost a lot on the offensive line. They lost a lot in general, offense and defense. But this is a team that, to me, always prioritizes defense. And even though they have some holes on the offensive line, and kind of like how we were talking about, Johnny Newton here in the Lions, I think if he's there for the Ravens, I think they just don't even think it, and they just take him and worry about the rest later. So I'm going to go with Newton here out of Illinois. And I think if you're Baltimore, you're really, at this point, you're really not beating anyone with your offense because it's flawed. So you got to beat them with your defense.
You could beat them with the run game with Lamar and Derrick Henry.
Yes, but that's a different style of play. And what worked last year in the regular season ended up not working in the postseason. So to me, you kind of got to play like a Michigan style of football if you're Baltimore, and just play amazing defense and have studs up and down, and then run out the clock and take advantage of turnovers and short fields and stuff like that. And they have Justin Tucker, so the special teams they got unlocked too. That's the only way they can win this. They can win in the postseason going forward, in my opinion. It's not going to be through Lamar. It's going to be through that defense and through that run game. So I like Newton here for them. So
Illinois isn't a good cornerback factory. How are they on as far as defensive tackle factory?
I don't know.
Apparently very good.
I don't know.
Anyway.
Last year's shots. All right.
I actually don't know.
I don't have any complaints because we just talked about them for a bit too.
Good value. All right, so now the consensus
for the Niners, the Super Bowl crew.
Yeah, the two Super Bowl teams. So the Niners fall short again.
Yes.
They just can't ever get over the mountaintop.
No.
They just always seem to be right at the finish line. And we're hoping Detroit doesn't become that type of team. Yeah, that just always gets to the finish line but can't ever complete the race.
We would have.
They lost a lot of defensive line. They cut Arik Armstead, and Chase Young went elsewhere. He's in New Orleans now. Javon Kinlaw walked. Sam Darnold walked. They did add Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos and Devondre Campbell, some vets, but I think, if they have a rotation going, they could get it going on the defensive line, but
Devondre Campbell was helpful because with the Greenlaw ACL tear.
So I'll throw something out. Do we think? I mean, there's obviously some defense there. We got Darius Robinson, which he's considered a late first round pick that would have some talent. Who you don't really need. Like Darius Robinson is more of like a floor guy. He's not really like a ceiling guy. You could pair him with an elite player and Nick Bosa. You don't need boom bust next to him. You just need production. And so Darius Robinson could make some sense. That'd be one option.
Do they take a receiver if they end up trading?
Do you take a receiver in preparation for your wide receiver turnover? That will happen because you cannot pay all of your wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you take offensive line just because you can, and Tyler Guyton is still there, is considered a consensus first-round pick, by most people. So those would be, I would probably say Guyton, Robinson, or maybe like a Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey would probably, Xavier Worthy if you want a weapon. What do you guys think? Those would probably be my names that I'm throwing out.
Well, I feel like if you do take a receiver, you want one that might be similar in the Ayuk area.
Because Keon Coleman's an X, so he's not. I mean, he could play the Ayuk.
Well, one that would be similar to Ayuk could be like a Ricky Pearsall.
Out of Florida.
Kind of like more of a route runner.
I mean, Ladd McConkey is the best route runner in the class.
Ladd McConkey too. But to me, I'm kind of in lockstep with you. I think they just kind of beef up that offensive line.
With Guyton.
I think they trust Jawan Jennings, honestly, as like a wide receiver too. Like I don't think
He played well.
I don't think Kyle Shanahan would be totally like freaked out if Jawan Jennings was the 2. And I think they could wait on a receiver. It's a deep class.
They could probably get one next
I don't
round.
think, and I don't think they're gonna. Like to me, I just don't see them taking a Ladd McConkey. I don't really see them going anywhere else here other than defensive line or offensive line. I think they're going to focus on the trenches with this pick.
So I'd be good with Robinson or Guyton. We'll let Justin, you make the pick of the 2. He says Guyton. I'll throw out Robinson. You can make the decision of the 2.
I think I'm going to go with Guyton
Okay.
for the fact that a lot rides on Brock Purdy, so protect that man.
And a lot rides on the health of Trent Williams, too. Who's going to be 34, 35.
Yeah, and you saw how they played when he was out. Those 3 games,
Right.
that skid. That was a big him being out.
And it wouldn't be bad to start getting a tackle in the system that maybe can play right tackle for now, but can move over to be left tackle to take over.
Yeah, and this
I like
pick,
the pick.
it's total value pick.
Good value.
Yeah, especially,
Yeah, Brugler has him as 27th player in the draft, so you get him at 31. That's good value.
The big one.
So the
what?
Chiefs.
Chiefs. They bring in Hollywood Brown. We
Yeah.
don't know
They do.
what's going to happen with Rashee Rice. Kelsey's still
Yeah.
going to be there.
Yeah,
The backfield's fine.
that's tough for Kansas City. Is when you have an open situation like the Rashee Rice one, it plays into your draft plans, and you have to go off the information you have now. And the information I would go off now is just assuming that you don't have him, assuming that that'd be the safest assumption. Is just to assume that. Not to assume that you have him, because nothing is final and nothing is done. I don't necessarily know that, or that doesn't necessarily mean wide receiver becomes your top need, but it definitely becomes more of a pressing need. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options here. I mean, you just let L'Jarius Sneed, you just traded him away. Ennis Rakestraw, it's a scrappy corner that people like. Kamari Lassiter, some people like him. Mikey Sanders still. I love Sanders still, but he is
do
a little
too.
small.
I like Sanders still, too.
He is small. People project him to be more of a nickel corner. If you play him on the outside, he's really undersized. He's a little short.
It's crazy that he was a receiver first.
Yeah. So, but he's very polished. So I like Ladd McConkey as an option because he is
I'm
a pure route runner. Like he is Amon-Ra St. Brown light, except Ladd McConkey can play inside and outside. St. Brown, he's trying to work on his ability to play on the outside, but he's mostly a slot guy. McConkey can play in the slot and on the outside. I think that'd be good for Kansas City. You can move him around. If you do have Rice, you can move him into the slot. He could take over, he could take that slot role for Kelsey when Kelsey inevitably leaves. I like that as an option. So what do you guys think?
I agree. I think with Ladd McConkey, you're not really drafting him to be your wide receiver 1. He might put up stats as a wide receiver 1, but he's not playing that role.
Right.
And I think that's where he will thrive best in the NFL. You have Rice and you have Hollywood, at least for the season, and then you'll have Kelsey. Ladd McConkey just slides in perfectly. He's going to be like the guy that moves the chains, catching wide receiver screens. He's going to be doing all the little things, all the little intricate routes. How about a comeback route? How about a flat, a curl route? Like he's going to be doing all sorts of little routes, and then before you know it, like he's going to be on some deep post, and he has that ability to do so.
Yeah.
So like the way that Andy Reid and Mahomes will be able to use him is going to be devastating, and he pairs beautifully with the skill sets of Rice, Kelsey, and Hollywood. So I think it's a slam dunk pick, honestly. And that's the ideal spot for a Ladd McConkey to go to, right?
Yeah.
Where he's not being demanded to be a wide receiver 1. He's going to be a piece to a much bigger puzzle.
In the last couple of years, they've kind of left Mahomes out to dry a little bit. They've been essentially putting a lot on his plate to be like, you know what, you're the whole offense. We can't afford to add to the offense. But now you draft Rashee Rice, you draft Ladd McConkey, you have him on cheap deals, and you're loading up the offense, and you're now you're making things scary because now you have Mahomes in his prime, and you have all these weapons that you got to play against. And the best play caller, arguably, in NFL history to play with them all.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck. So, okay, so that's the mock.
That's it.
That is
32 picks. About 2.5 hours.
31 picks that make a ton of sense.
One that doesn't.
One that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
We love it. We love it.
Look, I'm not saying Bo Nix is going to be the pick. I'm just saying
Don't count it out.
I think it's a potential, but it might not even be Dallas. But I think Bo Nix goes first round, and I think it's in the 20s somewhere, and I wouldn't be shocked. Unlike I think everyone else would be.
I think it'd be more likely
Dallas.
to be Tampa.
It could be for sure.
Although they did just sign Baker.
Yeah, the $100 million.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be one of these teams. Could be a team that trades in
to
the 20s. But I do think like 24 to 29, 30. That's where you could see Bo Nix going, and that's why I wasn't afraid to make that pick.
Favorite and least favorite of this.
So my least favorite is Caleb. No, I'm just kidding. It's
Yes.
Bo Nix by a country mile. And for my favorite pick, I'm just gonna go with Brian Thomas to the Steelers because I just think that's a steal. I just think he shouldn't go 20. I think he should be a top 15 pick. And if he goes 20, then you got a really, really good value there. So that's what I'm going to go with.
You want to go or you want me to go?
You can go.
So my least favorite is my own with Amarius Mims.
Because you thought you fumbled.
Yeah,
Maybe taking quarterback.
Yeah, because I just thought about it and everything. My favorite is Adonai Mitchell to the Bills.
That's an awesome pick.
I just think that's going to be great with Josh Allen potentially,
Yeah.
and he's just such a solid receiver. One who's going to put in the work, and just his attributes can just make him phenomenal, especially with the arm, like you said with Josh Allen. Sky's the limit.
All right. I mean, I would just based off my commentary. I guess my least favorite pick is Kool-Aid, but I mean, really, I don't dislike Kool-Aid.
It's just because of the line. It's because Dan Campbell.
I just think it's just the mentality in the front office. Like I guess that's what I'm thinking. But outside of that, I would probably say I'm not crazy about like my own pick here.
Don't forget there's Latham and Ladd. I don't think anyone's really complaining about the bottom two, but just so you see them.
Well, yeah, that's good. I guess I'm not really crazy about my own pick here with Bo Nix either. Like I'm being honest about it. Like I'm just saying, don't be surprised if it happens. Like it wasn't like I'd made.
But Dallas will probably jump on Powers.
I mean, I'll still be surprised if it happes because I think
I just think
that's
the range. Like, but it might not be Dallas. Like,
yeah, because if Minnesota does nothing, 23 to 26 is probably that Bo Nix range before going to the next round.
But my favorite pick, and this is a little chalky, but it's just Marvin Harrison Jr. to Arizona. Like I know it's
Kyler,
but I just think it's going to be sensational. It's going to feed families.
As the kids say.
Kyler and Marvin is going to be awesome to watch, and like I'm just geeking out about it. So it's chalky.
It doesn't happen.
It's chalky, but it's going to be like it'd be amazing if it did happen, and I'm hopeful that it does because it will be so cool.
Any guy you're missing that you think should be maybe first round or your / sleeper, whatever you want to discuss?
Well, I'll just reiterate Mikey Sanders still. I think if he was just 2 inches taller, right? If he's just 2 inches taller, he's a top 15 pick. Easy. And he's in conversation with Arnold and Quinion for the best corner in the class. Mm-hmm. He's so sharp. And what he did at Michigan, I heard this the other day and I thought it was a really good way of putting it. He was the best defensive player on the country's best defense. I mean, that says a lot. And he has that swagger that you want in a defensive back, but he's also a leader and he's mature. So I just think even though we have a slot corner in Brian Branch, I still want Mikey Sanders still. in Detroit because I just think he's that talented. I think there's almost no chance that he doesn't become a high-level player.
No,
I don't disagree.
I actually do really like. I hate to say, it, but I do really like Sanders still. He's just one of those guys that, like, whenever I see him on the field, he's just making plays. He's around the ball. Sure tackler too. Like everything he does is done with a purpose, and I think that is where he kind of sets himself apart from everyone. Is like he plays football the way it's supposed to be played, and he doesn't like take it for granted. Like he plays the game with every ounce in his being. My favorite, like under the radar guy, I had to make sure I had the name right because I didn't want to mess that up. Javon Baker, wide receiver from UCF, Alabama, a recruit, didn't make the team really. Transferred, I think once, I forget where to, but then ends up at UCF. And really solid year, really good athleticism, really good prototype. Definitely a day 2, day 3 kind of player, but that's kind of like my sleeper pick. I like what I saw from him, and I think he's gonna be a nice player in the NFL. It just depends on where he lands. But Baker, that's kind of my guy.
I think an interesting one is, since there's not a lot of depth in this. Jatavion Sanders, the tight end from Texas, if he can drop his weight a little bit, I think he's a great ball catcher. He's got, he does have good athleticism for his size, but I think his ability to also be a great blocking tight end is a good asset for him going forward. I think back to Pittsburgh taking Darnell Washington, but this guy is a better offensive weapon than you'd think he would be.
I also wanted to throw out the name Jordan Travis. If he didn't get hurt, he's probably a 2nd or 3rd round pick. And now you might be getting him in the 4th round at the earliest, probably more like the 5th or 6th round. And he has the potential to be a starter. He's not a day 1 starter, nowhere close. But if you can sit him for a year or 2, he could be one of those guys that comes in relief for an injured quarterback, actually does a little something and might even earn the spot or earn himself a opportunity to get himself a spot. So he'll have time to heal up. But just want to throw that name out there because he has the talent.
Yeah, and his injury transcended the college football world.
Yeah, changed the way the playoff was determined for that year, and I know Florida State fans are pretty salty.
And clearly that shows you he has to have some value, right?
Right.
Like for it to just change like that.
I think that'd be like a pretty sneaky day 3 pick there for sure. A 4th rounder.
Another guy, never sleep on him. He was out half the season, but if someone gets and properly puts them together, Tez Walker of North Carolina, receiver, that's a great late round pick to just add to your team, I think.
There is a guy, Johnny Wilson on Florida State, who he's massive, too. Might project more as a tight end.
I know, I see him. He's such a good ball catcher, but a good hands catcher.
Yes.
Yeah, he has good hands.
He might be more of like a vertical threat tight end, more so than like an outside guy, if he makes that transition.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
he's a thick boy aside Keon Coleman.
Thick. So I mean,
he can drop some weight if he wants to be a receiver. Drop some weight, or he's fine if he wants to go to tight end.
I think he could make a transition to tight end pretty smoothly, given
his
size and his just a catching ability. I just don't really see him playing on the outside, but on the inside, oh yeah.
Do you have an overall rating to close it out for just our draft as a whole?
I think it's better than last year's. I think it's a little bit more thought out, a bit more.
-1 pick.
-1 pick, sure.
Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid.
Nah.
But I think it's gonna be reminiscent of what we see on draft night in a way. I think not that we're gonna nail every pick. We're probably not even gonna nail 25, but I think
that'd be great. Over under.
I think we're at least gonna nail within a 2 or 3 pick slot of most of these guys. I'll say Roma Dunze, plus or minus 2 or 3 picks, we'll nail that. Joe Alt, same thing.
Yeah.
Dallas Turner, same thing. Fatanu, same thing. I think there's going to be a lot of guys where we're going to be plus or minus 2 or 3 slots, and that's going to be about their spot, which I think if you do that, that's a pretty good mock draft, because it's not necessarily always the team. It's more so also like the value and the range that they're kind of going to go in, because there's trades, there's things that happen draft night, and teams have different values on guys, or different. Some teams go by need, some teams go by BPA. But I think overall, I agree with Evan. I think 31 out of our 32 picks were well thought out, and
Yeah, they were. They were.
Except for the first one.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the one that had the least amount of thought.
Yeah, that was like last year. It was literally like battle between, and then you just went for it.
Yeah.
But it's a good one. I'd say I agree. I think I'm overall
I think like
impressed with this one.
if we pull this up post draft, we could say, you know what, that's
Pretty good.
pretty
Yeah.
good.
Obviously, there's going to be some ones that that are going to definitely drop, and some that are going to rise. So it's just depends on what we see.
Yeah, like, don't be surprised if Newton goes more so on this side than this side.
Yeah.
That'd probably be the biggest change up is him, because he's the only one that we had fallen. But,
Yep.
So we'll see what happens. This will be coming out over on us either Saturday or Sunday. I'm going to figure it out. So this Thursday will be the draft when this comes out. So this upcoming Thursday. And then we're going to probably let it settle for a bit, and then we'll do a post-draft analysis, mostly once he gets back from vacation.
But also, you got to let the emotions of the draft
Exactly, kind of sit down. So about
give your feelings a chance to really settle.
Yeah, so we'll give a little 2-week break after the draft to let it set in, and then we'll do our analysis, and then we'll go from there. Off season, and the season's 4 months away.
Crazy.
Shortly. But thank you, Tyler, for coming on.
Of course.
We'll be back for that post-draft analysis.
Oh yeah.
And we can complain some more about what went wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be interesting because I know last year me and Evan flipped out over the Lions draft, and now it's just funny how
I loved it.
I love the draft now, and it wasn't just because of a year later. It was like they're in the midst of the season. I'm like, okay, I could see why they made Gibbs the pick and all that. And so I'm looking forward to the draft reaction episode, because it's always interesting to see how our initial reaction is, and then look back
you're
on
like,
it.
wow, they were good.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I remember when we did our reactions, I think I gave the highest grade of the Lions draft, and it was only like I think I gave him like a B minus. We really weren't that high on the picks. We were questioning a lot of what they did. But that's why, they're there and we're
here.
Right.
So, but it's fun, we're fans.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. And we're happy with, and the fact that it's a better, the end ends up being better, that's all we can ask for.
and we're getting our new uniforms soon,
Yeah, I
so we
know,
can maybe chat a couple minutes about that. And
do you like them? Yes or no?
Yeah.
I think they're going to be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm
So
pretty
they
good.
will, at this point, they will have come out about 2 or 3 days beforehand.
Yep.
So for Detroit fans, sorry for anyone else not watching that's not a Detroit fan. Your loss.
yeah,
I don't know. There's a lot of interesting. Different teams are getting different jerseys this year. There's supposed
Houston's
leaks
look
at Houston.
pretty nice.
They look very basic, but
They are a little
fine,
basic, but they
right?
look pretty nice.
To me, their helmet is what will control everything.
Yeah.
Do they keep the full logo, or they've talked about just doing like the horns on the
They
side?
just do the horns. That'd be sick.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens with them. I guess we'll see you guys in the next one. Enjoy this. Comment what you love and what you hate. Bo Nix or Kool-Aid.
yeah.
I don't know. There could be other ones you hate, but we'll see what happens. Should be a good draft. Should be exciting to see, especially if it's being in Detroit, location-wise and everything.
It'll be fun
awesome.
to go down there. It'll be mine and Evan's first time attending the draft, so that'll be fun. We'll talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, we saw
The scenes.
the seeds.
All the different fans.
I know that's going to be interesting.
That's going to be wild, yeah. Seeing and
You're
see,
not welcome here. No.
See,
Yeah.
see how many people are actually Detroit fans, but they're like, are they really Detroit fans? Are they
Right.
not Detroit fans?
Right.
Yeah. It'll
I don't
be
know.
fun.
This is big
It'll
for
be-
the
it'll be
city,
sweet.
though.
Yeah, we haven't had an event this big in a very long
Since
time.
the-
Probably since Taylor Swift
Did we have
concert, but Like honestly, if you're being
But it's
honest,
indoors,
Well, we had
right?
the Super
Yeah.
Bowl.
So I'm thinking of outside. I'm thinking outdoor.
Super Bowl like 10 years ago.
I'm
maybe
thinking
12 years,
of
15 years ago.
no, yeah. I'm thinking either the Super Bowl or the Pistons win the NBA Finals. Those
Yeah.
would probably be the two.
Yeah.
So at least it's been about 15 years, at least 15 to 20 years.
it's the biggest event since Taylor Swift.
I'm thinking of outdoors taking over the city. Taylor Swift was indoors.
Outdoor taking over the like. Oh, she did. Oh, there was.
I'm not saying she didn't take over the city, but this is different. Were the streets flooded with people after the concert got out? Yeah, but I'm talking about just everything is going to be.
Yeah. No, you're probably right. You're probably right. It's a huge event.
It's also cast on national TV.
It's the biggest event of the NFL calendar year every year. No other event draws in more people.
Which is crazy. I just hope that the space by the stage is open enough for just people to be there. It seems like it is, but then it seems like it's not. Like if I saw some pictures of it recently, and I'm just like, But it extends all the way to Ford Field from like there. The whole like pathway is blocked off.
They were
by
saying if you
streets.
wanted to get a good view of the theater, you got to get there like 12 hours early.
So 8 a.m.
Yep.
And people will probably be already camping
And stake
out
out
there,
for
so.
12 hours, hold your
I'm
spot.
thinking you got to go 8 p.m. on Wednesday and be there.
Some people will be there like
24
24
hours.
I've done that for
hours.
Lollapalooza, but not for 12 hours.
for the draft. You'd rather be able
like
to.
staking
You'd
out
rather
like
walk
a
by,
concert.
see it, and then go to the top of tin roof and enjoy your evening.
Yeah.
Like I staked out a concert for a very long time at Lala.
Was it Travis?
No, it was. I think it was the weekend.
Oh, okay.
I think it was the weekend. We got pretty close for the weekend. But yeah.
On the weekend. All right. We'll see you guys soon. Peace.